We'll go ahead and call the meeting to order. It is 7:03. We did have the one amendment to the agenda that was emailed out. We have a motion to approve the agenda.
I move to approve the agenda with the added amendment.
Do you have a second?
I'll second that.
All in favor?
Okay,
Aye.
do we,
Yeah, we're doing the whole roll
yeah,
call
we've
thing
got to
again.
do the roll call. I have a nice little sheet of paper to keep track of all of it. Okay, so I will call your name and you just tell me what your vote is. Counselor Bedwell,
Yes.
Counselor Caceres,
Aye.
Counselor Seha,
Yes.
Counselor Purdy,
Yes.
Counselor Sini,
Aye.
Mayor Clevenger.
Aye.
Motion passes unanimously.
All right, so first thing first, we have a presentation from Republic Services.
Okay, and I believe they are here and ready to go. KJ, are you ready?
Yes, I'm here. Travis is waiting in the waiting room if you'd like to let him
Oh,
in.
certainly. Let's see. Yep, there he is, allowed to talk. Okay,
Awesome.
I'm trying to share my screen and it's been disallowed.
That's okay. Kimmy can share her screen to bring up our presentation.
That was Kimmy.
okay.
Sorry, Kimmy.
There we go. So I just changed it to panelists, so you should be able to now.
Perfect. Thank you.
We're all getting used to this brave new world here.
Yes, forget to unhook things.
Right.
Right.
Okay. Good evening, Mayor and Council. My name is KJ Lewis. I'm the Municipal Relationship Manager for your solid waste and recycling company, Republic Services. And with me tonight, I have Jay Lawson, who's the Operations Manager in your area, Will Mathias, who is our Business Unit Finance Manager. Also on the call is Kimmy Chambers, our Assistant Division Controller, and Travis Comfort, our Contract Administrator. And Jason will probably pop in. Jason Jordan will probably pop in soon. He's attending another City Council meeting virtually, but that should be over quickly. Next slide. First, I just want to update you on what our company, how we dealt with the COVID crisis. The first thing we did is we sent all non-essentials and non-frontline workers home right away with equipment that they needed to do their jobs, including our customer service agents had all their equipment delivered to their home so that they could answer any questions from customers. And we did staggered starts in the morning with our drivers and frontline workers, and did all of our tailgates outside so that people could be distant from each other. We provided an additional 10 days paid PTO for those diagnosed with COVID, or if they had to care for a family member. We also took this opportunity to institute paid family leave, so 8 weeks for the primary caregiver, 2 weeks for a secondary caregiver. But the main thing I wanted to talk about was our Committed to Serve initiative, which is something we did for both our frontline employees and our communities, especially small businesses in our communities, because everyone from residential to, the businesses in the communities are our customers. To keep our frontline happy and healthy, we provided 2 meals a week to them, right from the shutdown on. 1 lunch and breakfast a week, and then 1 family meal per week that they could take home to their family. And those meals came from locally owned restaurants, and those big family meal orders could make quite a difference for the restaurants in our communities. We also instituted a gift card program for our frontline employees where we provided $100 every other week on the gift card to spend in the communities we serve. And we made that like a contest where they would send in selfies of, them with their card, and they had a piece of paper to hand to the business owner, we're committed to serve. And then the numbers there, those are our national numbers: $11 million in gift cards, $6 million to local restaurants, 28,000 frontline employees. But in our own business unit that serves your city, including Portland Metro and just all of Northern Marion County. We have 200 frontline employees. We spent $28,000. Somebody needs to mute. $28,000 at locally owned businesses and $76,000 at in gift cards. So moving on, Kimmy, you can go to the next slide. We were last before this council in 2016, and a lot has changed. So I'm just going to do a brief recycling update. The full presentation on recycling is in your packet. We just wanted to streamline it tonight in the interest of time. But just so you, to jog your memory, in 2018, China changed its policy on what it would accept for recycling. Previously, all the recycling in the world almost was going to China, as evidenced by the chart on the left. And once they instituted their policy, which said they wouldn't take any recycling that had more than 3% contamination, the recycling market went kind of haywire and had to find new markets. And some of the countries were just unprepared for the amount of recycling that was coming from other countries. So it's still a little wacky, but we're coming to a new phase in that situation, although the markets are still extremely disrupted and it changes from month to month. We did ourselves a little bit of a disservice as an industry when we buried the cost of recycling and solid waste. I mean, it made sense at the time because we wanted people to adopt the habit of recycling, and recycling was paying for itself. But now, due to these extreme market disruptions, we basically have to pay for our recycling to be taken away. For example, just in the division that serves your city, we went from paying $0 in 1 year to paying over $250,000 the following year to get the recycling processed. It's basic supply and demand. I mean, everything's it's just supply and demand economics. But we know that people want to do the right thing by the planet, and they want to do the right thing by recycling. So Oregon, just to let you know, Oregon DEQ has convened a recycling steering committee to look at what we can do statewide to solve the recycling crisis. And they're looking at things from making the manufacturers more responsible for using plastics that actually have an end market, or better labeling for consumers so it's just not so confusing for people and they know what can actually be recycled. And even looking at ways we can create a domestic market in Oregon. So those are very interesting conversations, and they are public meetings. And if you're interested in learning more, I would be happy to pass on the information to your staff, and they can let you know when those meetings are happening. I'm going to turn it over to Jay next to talk about your community in particular.
Good evening, Mayor, Council, and staff. My name is Jay. I'm the Operations Manager, services 13 cities. From Woodburn, Aumsville is one of those cities that we're proud to service. And I'll just give you a little bit of a brief breakdown of what's happening in your city. We've got 7 collection vehicles with 7 drivers that service Aumsville on a weekly basis. 3 of my employees live in the greater State and Sublimity Aumsville area. So there's just a lot of pride there, as they service the cities in which they live. Those 7 drivers are servicing approximately 1,255 homes each week. And you can see on the slide that we collected in 2019 over 6,700 tons of material. That's broken down there for you by line of business, 1,755 of those tons coming from residential and so on. One of the things that I take a lot of pride in working for Republic Services is just our community involvement. I'm fortunate to work for a company that encourages us to support our communities, get involved in our communities, and we've been involved in several different areas out in Aumsville. In 2019, we contributed more than $9,600 to the community there in Aumsville in both sponsorship and in-kind services. I know last year was I think maybe the first year that we got involved at the level we did with Christmas in the Park. We really enjoyed that and had a great time. I don't know if Ron has kind of brought you up to speed, but we're getting involved this year in the Corn Festival that's kind of taken on a new life. this year, facing the pandemic, and then of course the in-kind services that we do. So really proud to service your community, really proud to get involved in your community, and we've had nothing but just great experiences and relationships there in the city of Aumsville. So at this time, let me turn it over to Will, who can kind of walk you through the financials, kind of the reason that we've come tonight.
Thank you, Jay. Good evening, Mayor, Council, staff. Appreciate your time allowing us to come in and talk to you about our financial position in Aumsville. So what you have in front of you now is a statement of income. This is a 6-year view from 2017 to 2022. So obviously 2017 through 2019 are actual numbers, and then 2020 through 2022 are forecasted numbers. And we used pretty common trend of what we see in our inflationary costs to help inform those forecasted numbers. But one thing I'd like to point you to is the chart down below. And just to explain this, the generally accepted range of profitability in this area for our industry is 8 to 12%. And that is represented by the dotted red lines, the lower and upper dotted red lines. And then the dark blue line is the midpoint of a 10% return. And that's really our goal, is to be around the midpoint and manage to be around there as much as possible. But one thing you'll notice is that from 2017, we were at 6.5%, 3.6% in 2018, slight uptick in 2019. But as we look at our inflationary cost, we expect to decline absent a rate adjustment. And just one thing to kind of mention here is that blue shaded area between the dark line and the light blue line is at least for 2019 and prior, is lost opportunity cost of not being at that 10% that we'll never get back. But we want to get as close to that dark blue line as possible so that we're in a good place going forward. One more thing I'll mention on this slide is that, the $9,600 in donations that Jay mentioned, that was 30% of our net income in 2019. You see our net income was $26,000. So, and then by 2022, again, without a rate adjustment, that would be a net negative because in 2022, we would expect to be at $7,800. So go ahead and flip it forward, please, Kimmy. So this slide shows the same statement of income, but it shows what it looks like with, we've assumed a July 1st implementation of a 15.6% rate adjustment. And as you can see, what that allows us to do is in 2020, it gets us fairly close to the lower bound of that range of profitability. And then in 2021 and 2022, it gets us very, very close to in line with that midpoint. And honestly, that's our goal. We're not looking to be way above the midpoint. We're trying to manage so that we're not below as well. And so this rate adjustment would allow us to accomplish that. And I'm sorry, go back one, please, Kimmy. Thank you. One thing to note here is even in 2019 at almost $27,000 in net income, Aumsville actually received more in franchise fees at $42,000 than what we made in net income. So just to kind of have a data point to compare what that net income means for us. But again, the adjustment would allow us to realign with that 10%. Go ahead and flip it forward, please, Kimmy. Okay, so here you see a schedule of expenses, and a couple of things that I'd like to point out here. First of all, the disposal and recycling line, which is highlighted in green. As you know, our disposal is flow controlled to the burner. That rate has not changed since 2016, but you can see that these costs have gone up quite a bit. They've gone in 2017, $196,000. In 2019, $250,000. So that's a big increase. And that is really all tied to recycle markets, where we've seen the cost of recycling increase as much as 3 or 4-fold. outside of that increase, and we haven't assumed in 2020 through 2022 that we'll see those dramatic increases on that line, but we have seen them hit our cost structure over the last 2 years. Then in addition to that, you'll notice just our inflationary cost as you look at 2019 compared to 2020, 21, and 22. We were at $481,000 in cost of operations in 2019, and we assume pretty reasonable inflationary increases in those future years. So despite the fact that we saw large ones in the prior 3 years, we're assuming a more reasonable and modest inflationary increase going forward. And then one more thing I want to note on that prior slide is that your franchise fee there is $42,000. Again, that's more than we made on the contract in 2019. But that, with the increase, that would actually go up to $48,000 in 2020. So just wanted to point that out as well. Here is just a pie chart, and it breaks down our cost structure based on a 35-gallon customer. And one thing that is the most obvious is that disposal and recycling is 43% of our cost structure. And just to give some perspective on that 3- to 4-fold increase in recycling cost, and kind of to tag on to some of what KJ shared, in 2017, we actually received a net rebate on recycling, which was passed through in the P&L to Aumsville. But in that net rebate for our division in Woodburn was $350,000 in 2017. In 2018, we went from receiving $350,000 as a division to paying $250,000, and that's what KJ had pointed out. So that paying of $250 compared to the receiving of $350, that was a $600,000 swing to our profit and loss statement for the division that year. And then the next year, it was an additional cost on top of that of $130,000. So you can see that our cost of recycling has greatly increased, and that's just not something that we have control over. In fact, the disposal and recycling line, that's one area where we really have very little to no control, because disposal is a set rate in Marion County at the burner, and then recycling is based on commodity markets, which we don't control. So when something happens in that category, it really drives home a need for us to seek a rate adjustment. So currently, your 35-gallon cart constituents pay $21.30, and that's the current rate. And 40% of your constituents are in a 35-gallon cart rate. So this represents most of the residents of Aumsville. The other cart breakdowns are not quite that high. So 40 is the largest portion. 40% is the largest portion in 35-gallon carts. Excuse me. And again, go back. Again, you'll notice that out of that $21 rate, $9 goes towards disposal and recycling, and then $4 goes to labor. So, those are two pretty big portions of our cost before we ever really get to a return. So again, just wanted to point that out. And I know for myself, my garbage bill where I live is in the mid 30s. My water bill is $150, gas is $115, cable's $40, electric is $125. So, out of all of the utility type bills, and I know I'm biased as the garbage man, but the garbage bill, you really get a lot of value. It's more affordable than the other utilities usually, and the other utilities also don't stop by your house twice a week in a $350,000 piece of equipment, which is what our trucks cost. So again, I hope you see that as well. There's a lot of value in the garbage bill. And here you have a rate comparison of the current Aumsville rate and the proposed rate with the 15.6% rate adjustment. That would take the rate to $24.62 on a 35-gallon container. You compare that to other nearby cities, to Aumsville, and that compares really favorably. In fact, it's the best rate except for Sublimity, 2 cents different. And Sublimity, we're going into that city for a rate adjustment in the near future as well. And so that rate will perhaps be going up as well. And there's also a difference in the franchise fee. Aumsville is at a 7% franchise fee, and Sublimity is at a 4%. So just some data points to kind of help inform the decision around the rate adjustment. And then one more I want to share with you, Kimmy, if you'll flip, thank you, is just the cumulative increase of your rate adjustments over the last 10 years, which is represented in the light blue line at the bottom. And this includes the one we're requesting now. And that's 37% over the last 10 years. And the other comparable indices we have here is the Water Sewer Trash Index, which is published by the Bureau of Labor Statistics. And they also publish the CPI index that I think a lot of us are familiar with. But water, sewer, trash, they define specifically as water, sewer, and trash collection. And it's the index that most closely aligns with our inflationary costs that we experience in our business. The difference between the red dotted line and the blue dotted line is that in 2016, the burner did a significant 30% increase on the rate. And so we did kind of note that separately, but you could see in either case, though the water, sewer, trash index, either with or without the burner increase, is higher than the cumulative adjustments that we've requested over the last 10 years. And with that, I just want to say thank you for your time. We really do, appreciate the sensitivity of the request. We know it's a difficult time for people as we've kind of gone through COVID and people are impacted by that. And we understand that. We thought it was a responsible thing to do to at least get in front with our need and kind of explain why we're requesting what we are. And with that, I would just ask that the council direct staff to draft a resolution to adjust rates 15.6%. Thank you very much for your time. We really appreciate it.
Thank you. Anybody have any questions?
I do. I have a question.
Go ahead.
I know that this was brought up to us, we knew that this was coming, and there was a lot of things that went through our mind, and this was before the pandemic hit and lots of people lost their jobs and went on unemployment, never got unemployment. Rate increases is not anything I think any city council counselor looks forward to discussing, especially with facts presented and there's an obvious need. So my question is the majority of your costs are with the disposal and recycling. If we agree to this rate increase, is there something we can do? Can we offer an opt-out for people and choose not to participate in the recycling, and they can just take it in? I know off Gaffin Road, you can just drive the recycling part is free. Is there something that we can offer? I know we did that with the debris containers.
Jay, you want to take that one?
Yeah, so there's a lot of things to be considered. I know that other cities have talked about and considered an opt-out. I can tell you that it's something that, to my knowledge, has not ever been done in Marion County. And there are requirements per cities, to recycle, to offer recycling, and those types of things that I think could be really difficult to navigate through. Something else that we see even currently with recycling programs, is that people are still contaminating recycling. And what I mean by that is, we come out and pick up the recycling cart, and oftentimes that recycling cart is contaminated. So I think when we take away that curbside ability for recycling, it's really going to discourage people from recycling. I don't know, how many residents would load that stuff up into a vehicle and take it out to skirts there on Gaffin Road or another facility. I really see a lot of people just discarding that in the trash, and then we're just really not promoting healthy recycling at that point.
Also, to add on to that, Oregon did pass the Opportunity to Recycle Act in, I'm not exactly, in the 80s, I believe. And I think, local governments do have some flexibility, but DEQ does regulate the cities and counties that provide Oregonians the opportunity to recycle. So there's some flexibility in materials management programs, but the act does state that Oregonians should, at least have the opportunity to. So I'm not sure, there would have to be some research done about just opting out.
I know, so like with an opt-out, the way that I see it, and if I'm wrong, let me know. We're not taking away our residents' opportunity to participate. The opportunity is still there if they choose to at a rate. So you're not really taking that away. And just because it hasn't been done, I mean, if you tell me it can't be done, for legal reasons or whatever, I totally understand that. But I just want to make sure. I really hate, I personally hate, nobody likes rate increases. And I see that we have the better rates, but I just want to make sure that we have looked at every option before we say, okay, let's go ahead and increase the rate.
I'll just jump in here and just add a little bit of background information. This is something that I've spoken with both KJ and Jay about in the past, because I know it's been part of our council discussions. And regardless of what occurs here tonight, we're still having those discussions. I think the requirement from DEQ, it's funny because the restrictions or the rules related to DEQ's mandatory recycling are somewhat loose until you get to 4,000 people, and we just crossed that threshold. So we've actually just received notice from DEQ that we're required to have a program. Now, I'm not sure, as we have our conversations with KJ and Jay as we go on, if there's not an opportunity for us to supplement one program for another. So those are things that we're looking into, but there is a statewide mandate related around the recycling program.
Okay. So my other question is, and these are all questions that I thought about when we were aware. So my other question is, so you're asking for a rate of just over $3 increase. Is that a hard figure, or I don't know if the council's ever offered a counter offer? Can we say, hey, I don't know, $3 seems a little, to some people it's not much, but to some people it is. We say, oh, no, let's not do $3. Let's do $2.75. Has that ever been offered? I don't know. So
I can tell you this, and Ron and I kind of had this conversation specifically. The last time we came in with an ask for an increase, it was 2016, right? So
yeah, it's been a while. I understand that.
Yeah. So 4 years ago, and when I look at those numbers from 2016, it was a higher ask as well, right? So it had probably been some time before that that the last price adjustment had happened. So really, I think maybe an answer here is, we're trying to line ourselves with just that reasonable rate of return of 10%. I think that once we get there, moving forward, I think the better option is possibly to take a look at just having an annual increase, that's a much smaller rate that maybe follows something like the water sewer trash index, something where, it's just, a 2.5% type of increase on an annual basis, right? So that there isn't this big ask every several years where we're really asking, council for a $3 increase.
Okay. And so my last question is just like theoretical. Like, so what happens if we say no? Will you stop servicing our area?
So that's a great question. There is a point. I mean, as you could see in the financials there, right? I mean, if we get to a place in 2022 where, our rate of return is $8,000 annually to come and service the city of Aumsville, we would have to take a hard look at, if that's something we can continue. Our industry is, very capital intense, right? So yeah. We've got $350,000 trucks that we're replacing, multiple a year, right, to keep the fleet up in shape. We're buying containers, on a regular basis. I'm spending every quarter I'm buying large amounts of containers, and so it's just capital intense. We get that capital from that rate of return, right? That's not necessarily built into the financials that we're presenting, and so that's revenue, or that's capital that we're relying on that revenue. So there certainly could come a point when it just doesn't make sense. Now I'm not saying that to say that we're looking to pack up and move out of Aumsville, but I think that these type of open conversations is certainly the way that we get to where we need to be, just having some good, transparent, open dialogue, right, on how the business works and how we can best service your city.
Okay.
I also think we would have to look at, we really, really like to do sponsorships and to provide for our cities in any way we can with in-kind services, and also just event sponsorships. And, that also impacts our profitability. So it's not, we would never want to not sponsor an event because you know what I mean? I understand. It's really important to our brand to give all we can to our cities.
I will just add a quick comment. I have looked at other providers, and I think, between now and the time if council asks for a resolution to be drafted at the next meeting, you could go out and look at some of those other tier rates. For public services tend to be a little lower in the industry, and our rate comparable to other communities that they service is pretty low. So not that any of us want to advocate for higher increases, but I think this just highlights that these small community utilities are really, really difficult to balance, with the cost of providing that service, because you're not able to get an economy of scale, even with that, comparable to services in Salem, as an example. It's pretty reasonable.
I had another question, but it just slipped my mind. I'll probably. So when do you guys, do we need to answer this tonight? Do we need to, what's our timeline?
Well, our hope is that as council you could discuss, and if you came to the agreement that it was appropriate, that you could direct your staff to drop a resolution to be voted on next month.
Does anyone else have any questions? I think I asked some pretty heavy ones. I don't want to be the only one.
I think you pretty much covered everything I was thinking. So good job on that, Jedi Master.
Actually, another one just came. I just thought of it. So, with, I said earlier, what happens if we say no? But what happens, so my concern right now is, so when are you looking to have this rate start? are we looking at the next fiscal year, this next, or January, July? I'm just really concerned with the state of our town's economics. I know, I just know that there's a lot of people that are unemployed and like living by the grace of God. So who's to say if, like we said, can we talk about this in 6 months? Let's wait until people go back to work, type thing.
Well, I can take that one. I mean, when we kind of put this together, it was pre-COVID, and we were looking at what it would take to get to 10%, and we planned on a mid-year adjustment, so July 1st. But I will say, I mean, we understand that the timing of this isn't great. We would really love to see the rate adjustment go into effect and get into a healthy place, from our P&L perspective on the rate. We know that there may be a better appetite for this if we were willing to delay the implementation, maybe till, I don't know, September, October. So we're open to that. And we definitely understand where the concern behind that question.
All right.
Counselor, I would like to mention also that, we as a company, we're quite happy to work with people who are having difficulty, and we do payment plans, and everything's done case by case, one-on-one basis with our customers.
I have never had a problem with you guys. I think anytime, my family has experienced hardship in the past, and you guys were right there with us, and like customer service is great as far as I'm concerned. But like I said, these are just hard questions to ask, and but they just need to be asked.
Yeah, we appreciate you asking the questions, and I'm also glad to hear that you have had good customer service.
Sort of a random question, but do you guys have any sort of like brochure or literature that is available on, payment plans and alternate schedules and things like that you have available that we could provide to the community? Because I think, I have no issues with this going into effect in July. I understand that you guys are providing a service to the community, and you guys help out with a lot of the events that we do and everything else. I understand a little give and take here. But I think given the situation with COVID, at the very least, it would be prudent to have some sort of literature or brochure available to the community that we can have a couple in City Hall, post it up online, something along those lines, so that if there are community members that have a hard time with this rate increase, we have the resources available to them from the get-go, and they're not playing catch up.
Sure, I think we could develop something like that with our comms team, but normally we ask that people just call customer service because every situation's so unique, and one thing we could do is do like a note on the bill that would say, on this date, council passed a resolution. It would probably be much shorter because it's, just a really brief sentence. If you have questions or concerns, please call customer service at blah, blah, blah. Something like that. Normally we ask people to call customer service so they can have sort of a like personalized plan, but sure, happy to do as council directs.
I mean, if you guys don't have something already written up, I think a statement on the bill is fine. I just figured, if you do already have something available, let's make all of our lives easier. But if not, putting something in the bill, I think is fine.
Right.
If I may, real quick, if you are planning on writing something up, or you do have something that you can modify, one of the things I would suggest is look at including the Mid-Willamette Valley Community Action Agency and their contact information, in part because if somebody is struggling with utility, there might be other things that they're struggling with. And this could be a great resource to not only help them pay for their utilities, but also possibly some other things that they're struggling with. The Legislative E-Board just approved over $95 million recently in COVID-19 response, with 55 million of it going specifically to rental reimbursement. So there's a lot of resources out there, and if you're going to be communicating with folks that they're having challenges, they can call you. It might be a good time to plug some of those other resources to help them with paying for some of those bills, just as a thought.
Yeah, Gus, that's great. That's a great suggestion. I can tell you that there are some agencies that we partner with, not specifically down in Aumsville. It's something I've certainly made a note of to look into, but just in the Woodburn, Silverton, Hubbard, Mount Angel, kind of that area, we've partnered with Love Inc., who does exactly that. And I probably have communication with them several times a month about somebody in the community having a hard time, with their garbage bill and other things. So, we partner with a lot of different organizations, not just, the things that we do for the cities in our communities, but also with those organizations. So I'm happy to take a look at what's available out in that Aumsville area. Because we certainly, if somebody is having a hardship, it's certainly something that, we want to be made aware of, and, have an opportunity to come in and partner with the city. In the case of Love Inc. and Woodburn, we've kind of partnered with the city of Woodburn. So, maybe this could even grow into something that we look at with the city down the road.
And that's a very good point, that I should do some outreach to Mid-Valley, because maybe they're developing materials already, and I'll connect with them tomorrow if I can't, in between Zoom meetings.
And you also have my this is Councilor Bedwell. You have my city email, and if you don't, I can get it for you. Feel free to connect with me. In my day job, I work with an agency that works with all of those community action agencies. So glad to provide you some connections, both here in the local area, but also through Mid-Willamette Valley Community Action Agency.
Thank you so much.
Do we have anything else?
And just at the end of the day, Mayor, we're just looking for direction from a staff's perspective on what you would like us to bring forward and the timing of any particular actions.
Yeah, I'm fine with moving forward with the rate increase, whether it's you drawing up a resolution or contract or whatever.
So
Anybody opposed to it?
I'm not opposed. We have to do it, right? Like, I get it. But I really think maybe if we can hold off a couple months. People are just getting back to work. People have been living off their credit cards and stuff like that. Their savings.
So can I just ask real quick? So Will had mentioned maybe a delay to September 1. Is that something that would be reasonable and acceptable?
Yeah.
I would feel more comfortable. I don't know how the rest of the council feels. I don't think we've heard from Larry or Della or Nico.
Yeah, I was just trying to jump in here too. I think that would be more reasonable to give a little bit more time for people to prepare their budgets. I know it's not a huge hit, but it is an increase for people. So if we can push off till September, I think that would be a great thing.
And Ron, I don't know if the community is aware of how much Public Services has actually donated. If we're going to do maybe a rate increase, I would like the community to know just how much they are really contributing to our home. I think it's really important.
Yeah, and we will broadcast those opportunities in concert with the various organizations. And I think I've had the conversations with Jay specifically and another community partner that really does a lot in the community. And my conversations with them are, I know it's tough to stop every so often and toot your own horn, but really you should do that more often, because I do think the community appreciates it.
Della, do you have anything? Or Nico?
I would just like to say that I agree with waiting until September to move it forward. I'm fine with the resolution, but I'd like to wait a little bit for people to get back to work as well.
So if we brought one at the next council meeting, but the resolution made effective date of the increase September 1st, does it sound like that would be something council's looking for?
I think so.
Sounds good to me.
I agree
That
with
way we can get it done and the Republic Service can have some certainty on their projection if we just get it off our plate.
Yeah, and again, as we're moving towards that, you know, I don't know, maybe we can use some of the material that they provided tonight as far as some of those graphs showing where we are in comparison to some of the surrounding communities, and those type of graphs that showed may help make people more aware of what they're getting for their dollar right now.
Yeah, I think we can get that up on our city website.
Yeah, get it up on the city website and the Facebook and everything else. I think that the key that we're seeing with rate increases is communication beforehand, not after the fact.
Well, it is in the council. This is in the council packet, but I'll put it up as a separate slide presentation.
Yeah.
Utilize all our tools in the toolbox to communicate this. It's my director of staff.
Well, I mean, unless anybody didn't say anything, I think we're all on the same page. If you want to move forward, Ron, with a date for the rate increase being 1 September.
Okay. Anything else you need from us, KJ?
I don't think so.
All right. We appreciate you guys jumping in here tonight.
Thank you so much
Thank
for
you.
hosting us. It's nice to see you all on my screen.
Thank you all. We really appreciate it.
All right, moving on. Public comments. So, Colleen, do you want to give people the chance to raise their hand in here, or however, if anybody has any kind of
Yes, I don't see any hands raised at the moment. So if someone does, then let's give them just a minute.
Do people know how to raise their hands? Like, I don't know if everyone watching has been using Zoom.
Well, I'm not on the attendee end, so I'm not sure where on each person's thing is, but if they just hover their mouse or their cursor or whatever device they're on over their screen, somewhere it's going to pop up, and there's like different things that they can do with different emojis, and I don't know if anyone wants to speak or not, so hopefully they can find that.
I see a hand raised.
Okay, Walt would like to say something, so I'm going to go ahead and allow him in. Okay, Walt, if you unmute, there you go.
Hey, thank you guys. I appreciate the meeting. I appreciate Republic coming in. Yeah, it's unfortunate that we need to raise the price. Looking at their profit and loss, we definitely need to raise the price. I think that waiting till September is a very good move. Make sure all the town folk, make sure we all know about it. And I guess that's it for me. Thank you, guys.
Thanks, Walter.
Thank you. Okay, Doug Ecclestone is also raising his hand. I'll go ahead and allow him to talk.
Hi, thanks everybody. Things that I agree with raising the rates. One of the things that I would be concerned of if, say if we didn't raise the rates and then Republic Services decided to leave and we were forced to go with another company, we could potentially put ourselves into a position where we would be forced to pay even higher rates. So I think it is in our better interest to work with Republic Services to maybe even do like a stair-step increase and say, we understand you want 15%, but maybe a lot of members in our community just can't quite do that right now, but we do a little bit now, and then maybe in 6 months or the first of the year, we'd do another increase just to try to work everybody into the system, because there are a lot of hard times that everybody's facing, and I think there's a lot of different things that we could do to get creative with it. And that's all.
And
Thank you, Doug.
Doug, I'll just respond to that. One of the difficulties with the delays or phased in approaches, because we have our own forecast model here at the city, so I understand the analysis that went into this rate increase, and the difficulties with those is anytime that you change the timeline or the program to get to the same place, you've got to have a larger increase. So if they wanted to do this rate increase over a 2 or 3 year period, the 15% would really have to be 20. And so what you do is you find out that you're paying a little bit more, but the compounding effect of that increase over time is significant. And so that was one of the reasons why I had discussions with Jay and KJ about, don't wait 3 years, come in earlier, because what happens is if we would have looked when we did the increase in 2016 at these projections for the next 4 years, instead of a 15% increase overall, which is what we're looking at today, that increase might have been a phased in increase of 8 or 9%. The reason why it's 15% overall is you're having to make up for that little bit of compounding effect that we didn't get in 17, 18, 19. And so that's one of the difficulties, but we'll communicate with them. And it sounds like council has a pretty good direction, but I certainly want to have a conversation with Republic Services about moving forward. And nobody likes to advocate for these types of increases, but it's pretty easy to see that they have to be able to operate, they have to be able to pay expenditures. And if we get on those earlier, the overall impact to the community is a lot smaller.
Yeah, I think setting up a stair-step approach to the increases would be one thing if we were looking at a $10, $15, $20, $25 increase. I think they showed on there the average was like $3.50. And so the impact of doing that stair-step on the community members is pretty small when we're talking about a difference between $1, $2, $3. But to them, with the total number of customers, that's a massive impact to them. And realistically, from a city standpoint, Republic has been very good to us, and I'm inclined to maintain a good relationship with them, given the fact that they have contributed to the Corn Festival and Christmas Park and all these events that we have. I mean, it makes sense that we want to maintain that good relationship. I think really the amount of the increase, I mean, if we subtracted the amount of money that Republic puts forward towards some of these events that we do, it lessens it substantially. So there is a large community impact that they have towards everything that we're doing, not just them picking up our trash.
I do have one more person who would like to speak. And it's Scott. Oh, there we go. Okay. Scott, can you unmute? There we are.
Hello, Scott Lee, 1215 Caleb Street. I was listening to the for public services, and I understand inflation and whatnot. However, when I decided to go with the yard debris can, I was told that it was going to be free, and then they found out our area actually charges for yard debris. So if our city's paying for yard debris, but other cities are not, why can't they get their money from yard debris from other cities? That's my only question on that. Again, I don't want to take away from, I understand inflation and they're going to need money, but I just wanted to bring that up.
I don't know. KJ, is that something you're able to address? I see you're still in the room.
Yeah. I would say that if, I've been with Republic for a little over a year, and so I'm not familiar with the way that your city has set policy or how that decision was reached, but I assure you that different cities decide on different policies. Like some cities want commercial customers to pay more so that residential customers pay less. They like balance it out, or, and those policies may have been set a long time ago. One thing I know is that we aren't letting, I wouldn't say we're letting other cities have their yard debris service for free. It's rolled into other services that they've got.
Mayor,
Yes.
I would like to say that when we did that yard debris program, we deliberately did not raise the rates like some other cities do to include it, so that if people didn't want it, it kept their regular trash rates lower.
Okay, thank you for that history.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Do we have any other public comment? I'm not seeing any hands raised.
No, no hands.
All righty then. We'll go ahead and move on. Consent agenda. Everybody get a chance to read through everything, check everything. Any questions, comments, concerns with the minutes or anything like that?
Little skimpy.
I mean, do you really want Colleen to type that all up? Because that'd be kind of mean.
No, I'm not being Colleen. I know better than that. Colleen takes good care of us, so.
Yeah. Right. Well, do we have a motion to approve?
I would like to move we approve the consent agenda as presented.
Second.
Cool. Go ahead and vote by roll call.
Counselor Bedwell,
Yes.
Counselor Caceres,
Aye.
Counselor Seha,
Yes.
Counselor Purdy,
Yes.
Counselor Sini,
Aye.
Mayor Clevenger. That's a unanimous vote. Motion passes.
All right. So we have 3 public hearings that we're going to knock out. The first one will be the state revenue sharing hearing. So we will go ahead and open the public hearing at this time. It is 8:01. The ordinances involved here, or excuse me, the resolutions involved here would be resolution number 820, resolution certifying municipal services, and resolution 9-20, a resolution declaring that the city's election to receive state revenues. Do any of the council members request that we have this read in full? I'm gonna go ahead and take that as a no. So staff report, this one I believe is Josh.
All right, so this one's kind of our regular hearing for state revenue sharing. This is one of the 2 meetings where we had a hearing. The first one was at our budget meeting. So the second one is to just basically discuss what we're planning on using the state revenue sharing.
Josh, can you wait just a second? Let me get you set up so you can actually share. Oops, that's me, sorry. Okay, you should be able to do it now, so do your share.
Oh, I don't think I had anything to share.
Oh, I thought you were just sharing your screen, I'm sorry.
I'm just reading my notes.
Oh, okay, well, my bad, sorry.
Thanks though. Yeah, so yeah, this is basically, we're planning on receiving the money into the park fund, like we've been doing to support the park maintenance in that fund, since it's a pretty limited amount of revenue that we get in that fund, and that's really helping to support keeping our parks in good shape. But other than that, we just need to have our public comment opportunity certified so that we can continue to receive the revenue share from the state.
It's a pretty small amount of money. I think 54,000. Is that what it is, Josh? Do you have the number?
That sounds about right. Yeah.
Yeah,
I can take a look, but
yeah, it's about 54,000 out of our entire parks budget. But as council knows, our park budget, we've been having to infuse additional money into that budget from our general fund to keep it up.
All right. Well, do we have any public comment? Anybody wish to give any testimony?
I'm seeing no hands.
No hands raised. So does anyone from council have any questions? I mean, we discussed this during the budget meeting every time, but anybody have any new questions pop up?
Standard resolutions. So.
Was that?
There's standard resolutions.
Yeah. Well, if no one from council has anything, then we will go ahead and close the public hearing at 8:04. Does anybody have a motion?
I move to approve resolution 820, a resolution certifying municipal services by title only.
I second.
Second that.
All right, go ahead and vote by roll call.
Councillor Bedwell,
Yes.
Councillor Caceres,
Aye.
Councillor Seha,
Yes.
Councillor Purdy,
Yes.
Councillor Sini,
Aye.
Mayor Clevenger.
Aye.
That's a unanimous vote. Motion passes.
All right, and then we also have resolution 9-20, which is the resolution declaring the city's election to receive state revenues. Do we have a motion on that?
I'll move that we approve resolution 920 declaring the city's election to receive state revenues.
Seconded.
All right, vote by roll call.
Councillor Bedwell,
Yes. Yes.
Councillor Caceres,
Aye.
Councillor Seha,
Yes.
Councillor Purdy,
Yes.
Councillor Sini,
Aye.
Mayor Clevenger.
Aye.
That's a unanimous vote. The motion passes.
Moving on, we have a budget hearing, so we will go ahead and open the budget hearing at, I have 8:06. This involves resolution number 10-20, which is a resolution adopting the 2020-2021 fiscal year budget, making appropriations, and imposing and categorizing taxes. Are there any council members that would like to have this ordinance read in full? Take that as a no.
So just a point of order, resolutions, I don't believe we're required to read. It's the ordinances, which will be the next action item, will be an ordinance, but I don't think these are required to be read in full. Is that correct, Colleen?
Yeah, I think so. It's just the legislative public hearing protocol. That's how they just say it. So
Okay.
I don't think you have to, but it's part of the process.
Yeah,
Okay.
the
Nobody
option,
wants
it
to-
doesn't hurt. I mean,
Nobody wants to anyway,
I'm not
but-
reading in full anyway. So that's a no. So staff report. Josh, Ron, I believe this is the both of you.
I'll go ahead and just start, and I'll let Josh fill in the pieces because he's the detail guy here. But really, there's been just a couple of minor changes since the budget committee looked at and approved the proposed budget. Those changes are outlined in your packet, and Josh can go over those. But I think the real significant changes the movement of some money that was for a project to replace a water line having to do with the Only Street project with HP Civil. We had a developer contract with them. We were also having some other issues with them that held the developer contract up. Once all those things were settled, we moved forward and went ahead and finalized all of those contracts, including the developer contract, and we made payment. At the time we were proposing the budget, it wasn't clear if we were going to make payment for that water line at that time, or if it was going to get drug into next fiscal year. So that was just really the change. I'll just reiterate to council that in the prepared budget, it's a good looking budget for the city. It's a good financial outlook for the city, and a good conservative budget. We did not calculate any changes to the budget based on the COVID-19 events that are currently occurring, and there will be some impact. Our approach was we really didn't know what those impacts were. I mean, this is a very unusual case, and rather than to just put in some very unsubstantiated numbers, knowing that we had plenty of reserve in each of our accounts, we chose not to put that in. So there will be some impacts, but as I'm looking at it right now, I'm not sure that the impacts will be that significant. There are some other opportunities as well. There's some grants that have been made available that we've applied for to help back fund some of those lost revenues. And there is also, I think you may have gotten an LOC bulletin out today. There's a effort by some bipartisan legislators to allocate some of the money that the state of Oregon has received back to the cities. And if that's signed by the governor, that probably would make the city whole in of itself. So I think we're good. I'm not overly concerned about any of the COVID impacts, and I don't think Josh is either.
Yeah, I don't really have a lot more to add to that.
I mean, it only slightly pertains to this, but I was emailed by the Mayor's Association the other day asking me to sign on to a letter that's going to the governor's office, basically allowing the cities to more directly distribute funds instead of them sitting up at state level and being distributed out of there. I don't know if that will go anywhere, but that could have some potential impact.
Yeah, unfortunately, there's been a lot of movement with funds at the state. I know I was on the call with Marion County, and this came up at our budget meeting, but I recently spoken to Marion County, and they didn't really see any issues. And then snapshot a few weeks later, and it turns out the state is keeping 50 or 55% of the lottery dollars that typically gets distributed to the county, and we see those monies in services and grants from the county. The county's not really sure at this point. They know they've got a vacuum of revenue or a loss of revenue, but they're not really sure how they're going to end up handling that at this point. So I think a lot of it, there's a lot of money out there. There's more money provided to the state, as I understand it, from my call with the county and their economic development folks. There's actually more money allocated to the state than what's lost in total revenue. So I think it's really just a matter of figuring out the vehicle to funnel that money down.
All right, well, do we have any testimony from the audience? Anybody have anything they want to say in public comments? I see nothing. Anybody from council have any specific questions? Take that as a no.
The budget committee and staff, I just want to say I think you guys did a really good job Really appreciated the layout that you provided at the budget committee meeting just a short while ago. It's definitely interesting times to try to be pulling all this together. So kudos to you and the committee for doing a great job on pulling this all together. Thank you.
And for any community members that wants to look over the budget is on our city website. We have it available in hard copies, but they're difficult to get with the city hall closed, but it is available on our new website.
All right, well, if there's nothing else, then we will go ahead and close the public hearing. I have 8:13 as the time. So, I mean, do we have anything we need to chat about in regards to this, council? I mean, we had a whole meeting about it.
Oh, I'm good.
All right, well, do I have a motion?
I move to approve Resolution 1020 adopting the 2021 fiscal year budget in the amount of $11,207,183 as presented, and to levy taxes at the permanent rate of 3.6327 per thousand of assessed value.
As presented.
Okay, so Counselor
So, both of you were
Sini,
talking.
I think Counselor Sini had you by a third of a second. So I'm going to put that down. She's on. Yeah, it was very close. Okay.
No, Nico, do you want to be the second? We'll just go ahead and give that to you, buddy.
That works. Okay, I'll go ahead and take the vote now. Counselor Bedwell,
Yes.
Counselor Caceres,
Aye.
Counselor Seha,
Yes.
Counselor Purdy,
Yes.
Counselor Sini,
Aye.
Mayor Clevenger.
Aye.
That's a unanimous vote. The motion passes.
All right, so the next item of business would be another hearing. Ron, I know we had talked about this a little bit prior. We're not trying to power this through this whole thing tonight, are we?
Well, actually, we actually are trying to go through this whole thing this evening. We did it in front of the Planning Commission, and Walt is a great presenter, and I think he can run through this unless there's extensive questions. It's about an hour process.
I was going to say, so if we've got an hour process ahead of us, we're an hour and 15 minutes into this. Do we need to take 5 before we jump into this? Give everybody a bathroom break and whatnot?
We can do that.
All right, I have 8:15. Let's go ahead and come back at 8:20, and we will do the next bear of a hearing.
So Walt, do you want me to share my screen and run through the exhibit, or does council feel like they can go through the exhibit that they have? Do they need me to do that?
I mean, I'm scrolling through everything on a second screen. I don't know what everybody else's setup is though.
Okay.
I'm doing the same thing.
Okay, we'll assume that you guys are able to scroll through as we go here. Josh is going to jump off. I'm going to grab the last two resolutions under action items. They're pretty minor.
All right, I have 820. Are we missing anybody? I don't see Nico. There he is.
There he is.
On the side over there. Gus is back. Larry, are you back?
Yeah, I'm here.
All right. Well, let me pull this back up. So we will go ahead and open the hearing then. This hearing is going to be for ordinance 670. It is an ordinance establishing comprehensive plan regulations for the city of Aumsville, Oregon, adopting an official zoning map for the city of Aumsville, providing for the administration, enforcement, and amendments in accordance with ORS Chapter 227, repealing Ordinance 323 and amendments in their entirety, and stating penalties. It is further the purpose of this ordinance to coordinate the city regulations controlling the division, development, and use of land, and to implement the comprehensive plan. Anybody want to read this thing in full? It's kind of what I thought. All right, so
I should say yes just for the heck of it. Be like, yeah, do it. I'm kidding.
you notice I'm not smiling, Angie. That's not funny.
Good night, all. It's been wonderful.
Yeah. A quick way to get me to resign. So, staff report, Ron and Walt, please.
I'll go ahead and set this up, Mayor, and give you just a little background, then I'm going to turn it over to Walt. But basically, as council knows, this is a council-driven action to update our development ordinance. Our approach was to try to clean up some of the inconsistent and conflicting language. This was funded in part by a grant from Marion County to allow us to hire outside consultants. Our approach really, as we worked through this ordinance, was to look for those areas of conflict, many of which we had pre-identified through the last few years as they just popped up, and to fix those areas of conflicts. The second thing that we needed to accomplish by this update was to bring our ordinance in line with current case law and current state statutes. And so there were some changes that we needed to do in order to do that, to bring our ordinance in line. And then there was a third objective, and that was we wanted to make sure that we were a little bit more detailed in the design elements that we wanted we weren't necessarily getting the results from development that we wanted to see because the requirements weren't outlined as detailed as they needed to be. But then on the other hand, we wanted to provide some opportunity to make it easier for businesses, especially those smaller businesses, to either develop or to move into spaces here in the community. And so what you see here is a mix of all those three objectives, with some concepts that we have already discussed with both the Planning Commission and the council prior to them going into this draft, I believe. I don't think there's any surprises in here that you guys haven't discussed or talked about. This was before the Planning Commission for a hearing last month, and they sent along a recommendation to approve. It also went through the city's legal staff, who had done mostly a lot of things that they did were Scribner type edits, but they also did do some edits for getting us in line with state code and case law. So there were some things that they edited, but the substance is still the same as the Planning Commission. So our approach is Walt's going to go ahead and walk through the red line version, which is one of the exhibits, and what we did was we provided you an executive summary of all the changes, and then we also provided you a red line version and a clean version for your adoption should you decide to do that. We will not go through the definitions. We will go right to the impacted sections. Definitions were really added because of areas that we added throughout the document, but we'll skip over the definitions. And I think I want to say the first amendment is section 4. Does that sound right to you, Walt?
Well, actually, there was just a couple little minor grammatical errors. Oh, before I begin, my name's Walt Wendolowski. I'm the principal planner with Morgan CPS, and I'm also a former planner in Aumsville as well. So it was a pleasure to do this. I'm quite familiar with the ordinance. We did some minor grammatical work on section 2, but the first section that we hit was section 3, which is rules for interpretation. The council, Planning Commission et al. Has the ability to make determinations on boundaries. We just simply added a provision that you could look at property deeds as one option. Section 4 talks about the application of zoning regulations. We looked at the issues of non-conforming buildings, and I think we, again, matter of clarity, and also I think brought things up to date. Basically, you can continue to maintain your structure. You can't expand the structure, but if it's destroyed, as long as you get a building permit within a year, you may replace it. Moving on to section 5, which is the single family zone. One of the issues we had was food carts, and I'll just note this for the RS and the RM zone and also the public zone. Provisions that would allow food carts were removed. We have a new section 26, talks about temporary uses. We also have a new section on mobile food vendors, section 27. But
and I'm going to jump in, Walt, because this was a topic that we had dealt with in the city. And so basically what this is going to do, what we've done with the food carts, is we've approved a food pod, which would be a land use action. Temporary food carts, the ones that would come in and go out of the city, are allowed with just the bland rules. And the reason why we did that is we didn't want to intermix the two. So if Lucky You had 3 food carts out there, that wouldn't impact their ability to use their building under land use rules. So they were a case study that were impacted because they had food carts. The way our code was written, they couldn't use their minimum square footage addition in their building because they'd already used up their exemption with the food carts, and they couldn't use the exemption twice. What we've done here is we've set it up to where if you're a temporary food cart, you come and go on a regular basis and you're not fixed or stationary, and you could still use the land use exemption for other activities.
Okay.
I just wanted to say that because I know there was going to be questions on it.
Okay. The other thing is that residential group homes were eliminated as a conditional use since you already allow residential facilities, and also keeping that since these are controlled under state law, the fact that you put up a minimum building size or lot area really did not apply. Also, when it comes to design elements for a single family home, you currently have 8 different elements, of which every new home had to have 2 for the front. The list was expanded to 11 elements, and new homes have to have 5. And again, this just applies to the front of the structure. It doesn't apply to the entire structure. Moving on to section 6, which is residential mixed density. Again, the same note on the food cart issue. We also have a little bit more clear and objective standards for attached homes. I think that's one thing the attorney pointed out. They weren't clear and objective, and that would cause some problems with that. There was a requirement in your code that the owner occupancy of a single family home, that provision was eliminated. It's doubtful this is even legal, and I cannot imagine the enforcement problems. What I mentioned with design elements, again, also applied to the RM zone. And there was one issue on manufactured home parks on a setback off of the street right-of-way, if you will, and a setback of 16 feet was established. And I think that cleared up that one issue. Moving on to the commercial zone, section 7, there were some language updates on permitted uses. Home occupations were eliminated since single-family homes are non-conforming. You do allow apartments above the first floor on commercial. For that reason, you also, since it's multifamily, need to allow residential facilities as well. The majority of your commercial zone is downtown, and it was thought that vehicle sales probably should not be allowed there. Small animal clinics were moved to being an allowed use instead of a conditional use. We also revised provisions on group homes. Again, you still allow apartments in residential facilities. And there is also a new section, well, not a new, but revised section on design standards for the downtown. I think it incorporated, I believe you had issues on window requirements and a variety of other things. Those were all maintained, but I think the thrust of the language had more to do with what you would really prefer to see as and things you definitely don't want to see. And there's, I think, sufficient latitude for developers at that point. Also, there was provision there to allow modification of these standards. I think the feeling was that once the standard is there, it should be applied, but someone can always request a variance to that requirement. Under the industrial zone, there weren't many changes. I would note that we did revise situations for mobile food vendors that would apply to the commercial, industrial, and interchange development zones. public zone, under section 9, we eliminated the mobile food service requirement, but I want to emphasize, again, if there's a event on a public park, if someone wants to have a temporary food service there, that is certainly allowed under the new section 26. Interchange development, see, the conditional use section was modified to eliminate provisions for compliance with the comprehensive plan that is contrary to ORS 197. There was also a section on traffic counts. I believe the section was 10.15. That was modified to reflect, I think, the current status of the interchange. Ron, you want to jump in on that? But I think the change was made to reflect the current ODOT interest on that, correct?
Yeah, and the statement that had previously been in our ordinance spoke to an IGA and set forth a process that, quite honestly, we weren't following. And as far as we can tell, and as far as ODOT can tell, there was no IGA ever executed. And so I think the language that we put in there now is just modified to reflect that any activity in the interchange development zone will need to fully comply with the interchange management plan. And we do defer to ODOT because ODOT sets a budget trip limit, or they had set a budget trip limit based on a TIA they had done maybe 10 or 12 years ago, I'm going to guess, and using that TIA as a basis to identify the impacts to the overpass. Our conversations with ODOT is the trip budget isn't really necessarily a set in stone number. If we're able to offer mitigation as part of development, that number could be looked at. And so it didn't make a lot of sense for us to have that language in there the way that it was there.
So Ron, just really quickly, so are you telling me we actually never executed an IGA? Is that what you're saying?
Well, what I'm saying is ODOT could not find it, and I could not find it, and I've not been doing a process that was outlined in the ordinance. So if there is one, nobody can find it, and we haven't been following it anyway.
Okay, yeah, because I know that in the past when we discussed it, it was certainly outlined we'd be doing an IGA, so it's a little, I mean, I know we're not following it, but to me it's a little nerve-wracking that, you're mentioning that you can't find one, neither can ODOT. I mean, I know stuff happens. I know things slip through the cracks, but I know there was a point in time where the IGA was hammered in our head. So
Well, and I really think the relevant document there is the interchange management plan, which the city did initiate and approve as part of our citywide transportation planning system. And that really reflects the kind of the impacts that we would need to mitigate out there. So.
Right.
Okay. Under section 11, two very minor changes. The distribution of building plans is up to the building official instead of the way the code is currently written. And also fee refunds will be based on a adopted city council resolution regarding fees. One thing you want to avoid in codes is doing things like a $6 fee refund, because if you want to change that, you have to go through this entire process that we're going through right now. By adopting resolutions and whatnot, makes it a lot easier for the city to change things. Under section 12, administrative procedures, I think this is probably the greater change, is that we've divided type 1 applications into a type 1A and 1B. Both of these are staff level reviews. 1A, notice only goes out to the applicant. Think of something along the lines of a sign permit or a property line adjustment. A type 1B is also done by staff, but at that juncture, you mail notice to the adjacent property owners. They have time in which to comment, and those comments are incorporated within the staff report. And those who do comment also receive notice. Big change here is that partitions, instead of going in front of the planning commission, will be done at the staff level, which is pretty common. There's a limitation on conditions of approval were clarified for the various public hearing actions. Also, electronic copies of a type 1 decision are sufficient in terms of the city requirement. The city attorney also clarified notice requirements for type 4 and rules of evidence, and also planning commission procedures were also clarified. Again, I think most of these were housekeeping measures to keep us consistent with state law. Section 13 is variances. The variance section now begins with a purpose statement, making clear that this is a measure of quantifiable standards that you're adjusting and not asking for a different type of use within the zone. Also, there was a question on time limits for variances. Usually these are tied into a project, in other words, a setback or whatever. And as long as the key decision, if you will, the project, say, building of the school is met in time, you don't have to worry about the variance, if you will. So it really ties into the project. Under section 14, conditional uses, again, we eliminated the requirement that it's tied into the comprehensive plan. I forgot there was one other change, and this is also within the ID zone. We do not require that the applicant proves to us that they can financially are capable of doing the project. That's really between them and the bank or their business partners. Also, a conditional use in terms of beginning a project was expanded from 1 year to 2 years. On zone changes, the attorney made, I think, the appropriate location for ballot measure 56 notices are now in the zone change section. Under annexation, we require, which is section 17, we also request that the property be adjacent to the city limits. In other words, we don't want to see a leapfrog type of annexation, which makes extending public services rather difficult. Off-street parking and loading, there are some minor changes to the measurements, if you will. But let me step back 1 second here. One of the issues that you face is that you have a business up and running, then another business wants to go in there, and based on what they do, they may require a couple of more parking spaces. We made the provision that you don't have to provide that extra parking unless there is a 25% or more increase from the existing amount. And I think I gave an example. If a business has 22 spaces and the new business requires 25, we will not require the new business to build 3 more spaces. It may be very difficult to do so, and you really don't want to see a variance process for that. So as long as there's just minor changes in demand, the business, et cetera, can go forward.
And this particular issue does impact some of the downtown businesses. A number of those are rentals, and they can fluctuate in their need from 4 spaces to 6 spaces. And we just didn't want to. We wanted to try to create a better mechanism for getting those spaces occupied when they become vacant.
One other thing we made a change on too is establish how some of this parking is done. I guess the simplest way of saying we don't think a business owner needs to provide parking for bathroom spaces. Just really focused in on what the consumer will be using. We had some minor tweaks to retail uses and industrial and warehousing. I think the big change for industrial and warehousing, though, is that you have to provide enough parking for the largest shift, in addition to some additional parking requirements, a shift change or customers or whatever. And I understand that is a issue now. Parking standards were basically just tweaked a little bit. Single family homes will require paved parking and also vehicle storage. One other thing that was proposed is go ahead and put an upper limit on parking. Public Works always has the issue of storm drainage management, especially here in the Willamette Valley. And by avoiding having additional impervious surface, that helps with the runoff. So there's an upper limit, 30%. So if you're required to have 100, you can have no more than 130. With regard to signs, all the definitions that were in section 1 are now in section 19. So you basically have a handout section with all the material. City also has some greater flexibility when it comes to determining what is an appropriate sign for a government purpose, and also rotating, flashing, and message signs may be permitted through the conditional use process. So the Planning Commission has an opportunity to hear that. There are a couple of dimension changes. Also, integrated business centers are no longer required to have a contractual arrangement to enforce the idea everyone has to have a sign on the freestanding sign. And also, non-conforming signs must be replaced by a conforming sign if they are damaged. Under section 20, land divisions, there were a couple of changes on the administration part of it, in signatures, and also going forward with if there's an appeal from the Planning Commission signature for the final plat. Again, that was worked through with the attorney to ensure that we are consistent with state law. Subdivision application, let me see, a subdivision application will be required in lieu of a series partition. So if you have a large enough parcel that might have more than 3 lots divided out of it, you have to come in with the subdivision application. Again, we also amended the provision, section 20.33, that Planning Commission will not hear a partition except obviously under appeal, but this will be a type 1B action. Another little change was lot averaging. For larger subdivisions, you might have some unusual parcels, parcel shapes. And so this would allow someone to have a few lots below the minimum lot size, as long as there's enough lots over the minimum lot size to compensate. So this provides, I think, a little flexibility. Public improvements now include street lights, and also the city may require some planter strips for collector and arterial streets. Major change to section 21 under site development review. A number of the activities will now be done on the staff level. Supplemental zoning regulations are in section 22. This is the classic catch-all chapter of everyone's zoning code. We made some changes with regards to fences, fence location, height, etc. You can use a retaining wall as a way to increase your fence height. So I think everything is probably a little clearer and consistent. The matters of residential accessory structures were revised. Yes, sir, Steve.
Hey, I think under, it says there fences, walls, and constructed on property line require a written agreement between adjoining property owners and recorded with the Marion County Clerk. They don't do that. They don't like it if they do.
I think we eliminated that section.
Yeah, I was going to say, I thought.
Yeah, me go to that provision.
BF.
2203F. Says shall be recorded with the Marion County Clerk and a copy submitted to the city.
Yeah, I tell people, no, let's put it on one property or the other because neighbors fight.
Well, and if we're going to have something like that, shouldn't there be some sort of clarification about, if there was an agreement prior and then somebody moved?
Well, that's the reason why we'd want it recorded, but Mayor, I'm sure we took that out because I think that was on one of our lists, but it's number one, it puts us in a position where now we somehow need to be responsible for where the property line is. And that's a very difficult position to put staff into.
And the county people I talked to says, we don't do that.
Yeah. Was it taken out, Walt? Did you see?
I'm getting up to, what was the particular section again?
F.
It is 22.03, paragraph F.
Okay, just a second here. Okay, 2020.
No, excuse me, it would be A1F.
Okay, almost there. No, nothing got back in. Oh, interesting. It was actually deleted under D, but for some bizarre reason was reinstalled under F. That really should, so it was taken out, but for some reason got back in there. So
Okay.
no, that thing was designed to be eliminated.
Okay. C, any fence or wall over 6 feet in height requires a building permit. I believe we're going to require a building permit for all fences anyway.
My understanding, talk to folks in building codes, is that up to 6 feet, you don't need a building permit. Now, the city can still require a permit, but that's a difference between an authorization to build the fence as opposed to you have to meet certain, I think, wind shear requirements and foundation requirements for the post.
But they don't.
If you look at that, Steve, under A ties those together. So it will require a city permit and section B and section C and section D. So that's tying those together. So it's talking about a city permit, not any kind of building permit from county or anything.
Yeah, I wanted to make sure it said city permit or something like
Yeah,
that.
so it says city permit under A, and the end of A and B both specifically say and. So it's tying those three together. So it's a city permit.
Thank you.
Okay. So, okay, are we done with that one?
Well, this is your show, Steve, so.
2204, I believe it is.
Okay, let me get
you can tell Steve deals with fences a lot, right?
Oh, golly.
What was my first clue?
And property stuff. So,
apparently greenhouses every once in a while. I had to move mine.
We want to make
There'd be light.
we're putting accessory structures closer to the property line now, but we want to make sure that no part of it goes over the property. We've had issues with that too, accessory structure.
Correct.
Well, the difference here is we're still maintaining the 3-foot setback. However, before we would measure from the furthest point of the building, not from the wall. And now we're measuring from the wall. All we're saying is you can't allow any runoff from your building to your adjacent property. So if you put an 18-inch overhang on a building that's 3 feet from the property line, you're probably going to need to put a gutter on it versus trying to move it.
Yeah, we've had people put it over the property line.
Well, that's obviously, we're not obviously going to allow that because it would be.
Okay. So 30, the 600
I did have one question about this section, if I may.
Okay.
2204.5, I'm just wondering, what is the reasoning behind not allowing metal siding? Are we worried they're going to get struck by lightning or something, or
Well,
is that just for the hell of it?
No, it's an aesthetic thing. So that's for buildings that are over 200 square feet. Because if neighbors don't want somebody putting a big metal building up in their backyard, basically. So what we're saying here is, in our old code, if it was over that size, they had to go to the planning commission, and the planning commission was simply required to make sure materials match the house. And all we're saying here is, you don't have to go to the planning commission anymore, but if a building is of that size, the material has to match the house.
So I mean, it's an accessory structure that's in the backyard. I mean, and just my first thought process is, why should my neighbors be able to complain about what material I use on an accessory structure in my backyard? As long as it's not going to fall down and kill anybody, who cares whether it's metal siding or whatever else? I mean, I understand to an extent matching the house,
yeah.
But that specific thing about metal siding is prohibited on structures over 200 square feet in area. I don't see the purpose of that.
Well, it's just because everybody comes in and wants to put, even though the code required, it's not a change in the code, Mayor. It's, even though the code required the building to match the house, then we'd still get people that would want to come in and do these metal pole barn buildings. And we just thought, well, let's just state that. If the code doesn't allow it, let's just state it.
But what if their house has metal siding and it's matching the house?
Well, if it matches the house, it matches the house.
So then shouldn't that line say, accessory structures over X number of feet have to match the house instead of prohibiting metal siding, but actually we're going to allow it if you have metal siding in your house? That just creates a point of confusion and contention, I feel.
Yeah. I mean, I don't think anybody has a metal sided house in town, but it would be the same different. If we took metal siding out, it would be the same different.
Okay.
I have number 2 is the height. The maximum allowable height is 16 feet, except that the accessory structure shall not exceed the height of a primary building. You have a single-story house, just because we talked about it earlier. Why can't they have a higher roof line? Della probably is an example. I think yours is taller than your house right now. Of course, it's a different code now.
Well, no, I don't think so. Actually, I think what that is referring to is it just mimics it mimics our current code. We did the same thing with accessory dwelling units. We said the accessory dwelling unit has to match the roof line of the house. So most houses, what we're talking about here, Steve, is we're talking about wall height. We're not talking about height of the building. So 16 feet is the maximum wall height. Before, our maximum height was measured at the center of the truss. So this sits below the truss. So it's actually allowing a taller structure than we did before. The only difference here is it has to be similar to the house. So if you got a 1-story house that's got a 20-foot peak, your accessory building can have a 20-foot peak, even though the house may be a 1-story. What you can't do is put a 2-story accessory building, something that's, 20 feet if you've got a 16-foot house. So again, it's just
define that a little bit better.
Well, I think I feel like it's pretty well defined. Walt, is there a way to make that any clearer that you can think of without causing more confusion?
Wait a minute. You're asking a planner?
Yeah. I'm a big dumb redneck, right? I read maximum allowable height is 16 feet. I don't read it's 16 feet at the wall, but not at the truss, but you can actually be up here, but this needs to, I read maximum allowable height is 16 feet. So
Yeah.
The more we can
everybody to be able to read
simplify
this.
this, the less issues we're gonna run into.
Well, what we say in the description for wall height is it's measured from the ground level to the top of the wall. So right now, Mayor, we don't allow a 16-foot wall. Right now, we probably allow maybe a 10 or 12-foot wall maximum height. But the problem with it is there was a lot of confusion around mid-span of the truss. What does that mean? And one of Walt's suggestions, and I thought it was a good one, was let's just say what the wall height is. That's the height. The reality is most people are not going to build a 16-foot wall. Most people are going to build a 10 to 12-foot wall for the garage because they want to be able to get a 10-foot door in there. If they build a 16-foot wall and they put a truss on top of it, they're probably going to have a 30-foot building, because your truss is going to be, you're not going to put a very shallow building. You're not going to do a small, shallow pitch on the top of that.
I get that.
Basically what the
You
code
see
says.
how much time it took to just explain that to me? And I'm probably the dumbest one in this room right now. So shouldn't we
I don't understand
explain
any
it
of
a
it
little
right now.
bit better in the code so
I
that
do
you
have-
don't have big dumb rednecks like me coming in trying to argue things?
I thought it was explained pretty well, and that is you can have up to a 16-foot wall height as long as it doesn't exceed the height of your house.
May I offer a suggestion on this one?
That's what you're here for, Walt.
Okay. I would suggest that we just add one word here. The maximum allowable wall height is 16 feet.
Okay.
Would that, you think, cover it?
I think so. I mean,
But
what
shall not
Ron was
exceed
saying
the
about the
height of the
truss and the
primary
center of the
building.
truss, though, there's going to be people who are going to come in and have questions about that. But if we put wall height in there, I think that will be helpful.
Yeah, and that language with the truss was the old language. That's why we tried to get rid of that. That was the old language. I don't think it's in there now.
Okay. Number 4, 600 square foot building accessory structure. Oh, is that just an arbitrary number, or is there a reason for it? Because I believe we have one right now that fits their backyard, a 36 by 24 in the planning right now, which is 864 square feet. And as long as they go through building or going through site development, I mean, there's several properties that can go with a bigger shop or garages. But
I think that was selected just for an aesthetic purpose. 600 square feet is certainly a 2-car garage plus. So that's not I mean, that can always be changed.
Yeah, I think we got a couple of them that want to go 36 by 24 right now that I know are in the works.
Mm-hmm.
Can we simply say, can we take a number out and simply say not to exceed your maximum lot coverage?
I think that's what I would like to see,
Okay.
the percentage. Not
to exceed the 30% of the entire rear side yard. I mean, yeah, taking that one sentence out.
I think that sounds plausible,
Okay.
because you're right. If you have a bigger piece of property, you probably should have a little more flexibility.
Okay, so we also talked.
And we do have big lots here.
Yeah. Ron also knows about this. They had a application for a awning, which does not match the roof type of the house or anything else around it. It's going to be aluminum, wants to be aluminum. A patio awning as an accessory structure.
Yeah, there's nothing in the code that doesn't allow that at this point.
So are we going to we're going to allow it though?
Well, there's nothing in the code that doesn't allow it. I don't believe there's anything in the code that would say it doesn't allow it.
I thought we talked about the roof materials had to match or something.
Well, that's what we prefer, but I don't believe this code was written before we had that discussion.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, I know. So and I know a metal awning, a patio awning is usually pretty flat because it goes right up to the house at their gutter height.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And I guess my hopefully last comment, we're not going to allow evergreens in the front yard trees.
They're not a street tree.
I mean, in the front yard. Anywhere in the front yard.
We're not
What
counting.
section is that, Steve?
We're not counting evergreens as the street tree or the yard tree.
Right. Okay.
They
But
can
it says
have them.
landscaping plans shall exclude evergreen trees from any yard adjacent to a street.
And what that means is we're not counting that as their tree, their required tree. They can have an evergreen tree, but we're not counting that. We want a different type of tree as their front yard tree. That's
Okay,
all.
I agree with that, but
Yeah.
it just seems like you don't want any evergreens. Okay.
So it reads like we can't have an evergreen tree at all. That's what it sounds like.
Yeah.
What's the
Pretty
section
correct.
paragraph on that,
Hopefully
Steve?
not to have an evergreen tree. It's what it kind of sounds like too. So
2304, number 4.
Number 4.
I think 04D, would that be right?
Yes. If it was me, I'd say, oh no, you can't plant an evergreen tree in your front yard.
I mean,
That's the
that's
way that I-
like the only trees I have in my front yard.
But that's the way that I read it, though. To me, when I read it, it makes it seem like, oh, I can't plant that. But
Yeah.
what we're really saying is you can plant it. It just doesn't count towards the tree.
The tree credit, yeah.
Yes, it doesn't. So maybe it needs to be a little clearer because the way that I read it, I don't know. Maybe is anyone else reading? Is there other people?
I agree 100%. I think especially in this section, the more clarity we can have, the better. To be quite honest.
So like we can phrase it like evergreen. We can just phrase it that way. Evergreen trees planted in the front yard are not counted toward the tree requirement. Or
I mean, honestly, I take a little exception to the city dictating like, oh, well, 25% of your yard has to be shrubs, but not more than 50. Like, as long as my yard doesn't look like the Amazon, who cares? I understand we want a certain aesthetic and everything in town, and I understand we have to have rules, but I feel like maybe we're getting a little too into the weeds on some of this.
Well, we're really not, and here's why. Because the way that the code, being as ambiguous as it was, even though most people came in and put in just a standard yard, without having some sort of a minimum standard, we get people that'll come in some of these homes, contractors, and they'll go out and buy a $1.99 plant and put 4 of those in the front yard and say good enough. And there's really no standard for us as staff to hold those developers or those contractors to.
I get that. I mean, I don't think Steve's going to show up in my front yard and start measuring my shrubs and tell me that I don't have enough. If he does, he's got way too much free time on his hands. But
Wait, I can make it by 8 tomorrow.
Yeah, it's.
I'll
yeah,
be
it's-
asleep. You do your thing, Steve.
It's really to apply some sort of a measurable standard. So when people come in with these landscaping plans, we're not going to go out there and measure the height of the bushes, but if it looks good, we're accepting it. But we get a number of people that really do try to press the envelope.
We have them
I guess
plant
that's
trees
kinda what
and
I'm
then they
getting
dig
at,
them
is-
up and take them out of their front yard.
I would like to see the city have enough leeway to apply common sense in these situations. And, you know, if someone has a nice looking yard, but, you know, they chose to put in one plant instead of another, or, you know, they're not quite at 25% on the shrubs, cool. Who cares?
We've always made allowances for alterations, but the way the previous code was written, or the previous language in there, you guys have heard the stories. I've talked to you about it before, and there's really just not a lot we can do about it. And so, you know, somebody comes in and they buy a $400,000 house, and the next house gets built over to them, and the yard is just a dirt pit. And, you know, our code, the way that it was written, there really wasn't a lot we could do about it, but we'd get complaints by the person that just made that big investment. Well, why are, you know, I just made an investment. Why are these folks here able to just put a big bark yard in? And so we needed to have some sort of standards. I think these standards are not, it's tried to mimic what you would typically see in a new house construction. So it wasn't like we were saying new house construction are going to have to do all this extra work. We were just kind of looking at what happens with the new house construction, and we were trying to quantify that.
There's also one other, people parking in their front yards and storing equipment in their front yards and junk in their front yards.
That's it. Well, this ordinance requires the landscaping to be maintained through time. But the nuisance ordinance and the parking ordinance, not part of this process tonight, but will be coming to council at some point. We'll address those issues.
Okay, Walt, carry on.
Okay, just to rewind, to go back to section 22, the idea of having that document recorded with Marion County on the fence line should be eliminated. It was, but it creeped back in. My apologies. When it comes to the height, you want to have it, make sure it's clarified as wall height on the accessory structure. And that way everyone's pretty much good to go. You also want to eliminate the maximum allowable square footage for an accessory structure, but simply have the basis on 30% of coverage. And that way, the bigger the piece, they can have a little bit bigger. And as you said, you're looking at some that are over 800 square feet in area. Am I reading that correctly? Okay.
You got it.
So now that we're all on the same page with that, I do have a clarifying question about lot coverage, because our maximum lot coverage is 45%. The 30%, when we put that in, was strictly for the backyard, right? Well,
correct. In other words, if you have a 5,000 square foot backyard, up to 1,500 square feet of it can be occupied with an accessory structure.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure those weren't in conflict.
No.
Okay.
There is a difference. I mean, you would still have to look at your overall impervious surface. So that will still count on that. But you could have a small house and actually a little bit bigger accessory structure as long as it doesn't cover more than 30% of your backyard. Correct.
Thank you.
Okay. Moving on for the rest of 22. We also have some clarification on the use of planters. We address specific storage requirements. The floodplain section was eliminated, which is 22, 10, 11, and 12. That was replaced with the new section 25. I will simply note for the record that the federal government has changed their rules, and they want to have the rules consistent throughout the nation, since this is a national program. And the folks at DLCD have reviewed the material, and they see no issue with it. So I just want to note that for now. We had section 2717 was eliminated, and we have a new section on temporary uses and mobile food carts. Section 2215 talk about traffic impact analysis. There is a change there to look at if there is a zone change that increases intensity. We can also require a impact analysis. We don't have to, but we do have that. Also, the city does allow home occupations, but there were no provisions other than a few lines in the definition section that talked about what could or could not be done. 2218 was revamped to have specific sections. Now, I don't know if I need to go through section 23 on landscaping. Again, were questions answered, but I think
Well, I think we just need to amend I think we need to amend 20.
What is it? 03D?
03D, and I think if we get rid of the last line.
Oh, it is 2304D and the last line on Evergreen, correct?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
And I think if we just get rid of that last line, we're probably fine.
Okay.
2304
D.
4.
4, correct.
Yes.
Okay. Make a note of that. Got it. Okay. Other than that, I think everything else was, again, just getting some standards that we can live with, and consistency on clear vision areas in terms of the height and also tree planting requirements. I guess the other thing we did too is that the current code lists all the trees you can and can't put in. We just simply eliminated all that and just said the city hall will maintain a list of acceptable trees. So again, the city could change that without going back and amending the code, which again, you're well aware, it can be a 3 to 4 month process. Moving on to section 25, that's flood hazards. Again, this is new language that if we're in the flood program, we have to go ahead and follow the federal regulations, and that was vetted by DLCD. We have a provision on temporary uses. It just gives the city some guidelines, like Christmas pre-sales, fireworks sales. If someone wants to have a couple of food carts for a special event, or again, the food carts at some local store. So we have that covered. There's also some language concerning construction shacks, yard sales, and auctions. There was a provision that talked about temporary residency for an RV, but that was stricken out by the Planning Commission. And I think you already have other, plus it conflicted with other language within the municipal ordinance. Mobile food services. Again, this is if you have more than 3 carts or however you want, trucks, and you decide to have like sit-down facilities, etc. This provides guidelines in terms of how to put it together. So this is a site development review. It goes to the Planning Commission. This is not something that is done over the counter. It just makes sure there's enough trash barrels, there's separation between the units, that sort of thing. And this is generally pretty consistent with other language as well. Finally, my report also goes through the findings for the text amendments. And I'll just summarize, simply note that I've gone through this. Everything you're doing is basically housekeeping, some aesthetic measures. There are no violations of any statewide planning goals that I can see here. The DLCD has reviewed this and they offered no comment, which is a good way of saying they see no issues at all with any of these changes. And unless there's any questions, that does conclude my staff report.
Walt, could you summarize the comments that you received in writing? You did receive a couple of comments, and we did vet that through the city attorney.
Okay, we received a letter from the Fair Housing Council out of Portland. They were objecting to some of the changes that you're proposing for things like paved parking, and I think some of the design features. They thought that would impact the city's ability to provide needed housing. I had contacted Kevin Young, who's the urban specialist at DLCD. He said he saw no issues whatsoever with what the city is doing. We are well within our rights to do so. These changes are purely aesthetic. I'm always curious why we get these letters from organizations that are Portland, and I wonder if they're chasing down Lake Oswego as well for these standards, but that's neither here nor there. But it's just the whole issue that they're a special interest group. We're not doing anything to violate state law, and the city attorney looked at it as well, and he was very comfortable what we're doing. So I think that covers that, Ron.
Yep. And so, just one final note here, Council. Again, we really just tried to mimic the current code and just build in some of those changes that we had talked about that were like more business friendly, and address some of the issues. But this document can change. It's a process. We've got to notify DLCD. But especially with the aesthetics requirements and things like that, those are things we can have discussions about and really change. I think we need to review this development ordinance once a year. I'm not saying go through a rewrite once a year, but we certainly need to review it once a year and find out what's working for us and if there's things that aren't working for us.
I have one more thing on the street types of cul-de-sac bulbs. When we did Clover Court, the fire department was just upset that we did not have a big enough turnaround in there. I think they want like 90 foot, so I need to know what this. I tried to get a hold of the fire department. I haven't got a response back from them, but I think it was 90 feet.
Well, I don't know. Would that be in our development code, Walt, or would that be in Public Works design standards?
Something like that should probably be in the Public Works design standards. Again,
Yeah, because it's in here. Street width, sidewalk width, bike lane.
Yeah, I remember seeing that. You got the section on that, Steve?
Yes, Steve.
That's for
I got such a
subdivisions,
mess
right?
here.
Right.
130 is the page I got, the marked up one.
Okay.
2071, maybe?
Okay, hold on.
Let's see.
So it's going to be 2073 B. It's the table in part 2. Cul-de-sac, minimum right-of-way width 50 feet, minimum roadway width 40 feet, sidewalk width 5 feet, cul-de-sac bulb 60-foot radius, minimum roadway width 45-foot radius, sidewalk width 5 feet.
Yeah, they wanted bigger bulbs in there for turning around equipment.
A 60-foot radius would give you certainly a 90-foot bulb for turning. That's 120 feet from edge of right-of-way to edge of right-of-way. Take away your curb and
45,
sidewalk.
Yeah, roadway width, 45-foot radius is 90, yeah.
Yeah. That should be more than enough, I would think.
And I mean, that almost becomes a question too of, is that a standard with fire departments, or is that something they need because of the
That's what he said.
They currently have.
It was a new standard that the fire departments were going to.
Okay. Well,
So
I mean,
find
yeah,
out.
if we're going off radius of 45 is 90, and then 60 is 120. That should be plenty of turnaround.
Well, and when we do I was going to say, when we do a land use application, the fire department weighs in on all those design standards too. I mean, we don't approve those without them getting eyes on them.
Yeah.
Have them take a truck out there and spin some donuts. Let me know how
They
it goes.
did. That's what I'm trying to say. They came down with the trucks and they moved the fire lane and everything from where it was originally said because they had enough room.
Okay.
So they said what we did was fine.
Okay, I just want to make sure they've got the standard that we need to go up to.
I think the question came up because, there have been fires of as of late where we've had to actually call in additional apparatus. Obviously, we don't have, the ladder truck, but we've had to use one a couple times. So I think where the concern was brought. At least when it's been mentioned to me, that was what had been brought up. So.
Well, there are some cul-de-sacs north of us that are smaller, and that's the ones they're having trouble with, from what I understand. And those were built at a smaller size.
Yeah, I mean, we can't go back and change those now, so.
No.
Okay.
Yeah, we're actually trying to get away from those and hammerhead turnarounds as much as we can when we're working on design standards with folks.
Well, Walt, is that all you got?
Yes, sir, unless there's any more questions.
Anybody else have any more questions? All righty then. Well, we're still in a public hearing, so general testimony. Anybody from the audience have any questions? I'm seeing no hands. Well, if there's nothing, then we will go ahead and close the public hearing. I have 9:24. And if there's no further deliberation, do we have a motion?
I move to approve the proposed amendments to the development ordinance as contained in the attached Exhibit A, adopting the findings and conclusions contained in submitted staff report as presented.
With modifications?
Oh yeah. My apologies. With modifications. I have to specify that. I apologize.
Thank you.
Do we have
I'll
a second?
second it. I'll
Cool.
second it. Me, Angelica. I'll second it.
Got it.
Got it.
Go ahead
Okay.
and vote by roll call.
Okay. Counselor Bedwell,
Yes.
Counselor Caceres,
Aye.
Counselor Seha,
Yes.
Counselor Purdy,
Yes.
Counselor Sini,
Aye.
Mayor Clevenger.
Aye.
That's a unanimous vote. Motion passes.
Now, I believe this is an ordinance, so we need a second, right? A second vote, is that correct, Colleen?
Yes. Yeah, we'll do the second reading. By title only is fine.
All right. So that doesn't require us to open up another hearing, though. It's just the
No,
reading,
no.
correct?
Just the motion.
No. And it'll
Alright.
be for the adoption as well. So it's a motion to pass the second reading and adopt.
So how do you want me to phrase that, Ron? Just to make sure we're on the.
Well, I mean, exactly the way Nico phrased it the first time is exactly the same way, except you're saying, I move to approve the second reading by title only and adopt ordinance.
So I need a motion for the council. Somebody
I
else.
move to approve the second reading and adopt of the proposed amendments to the development ordinance as contained in the attached Exhibit A, adopting the findings contained in the submitted staff report.
We have a second.
I'll second that.
Vote by roll call.
Okay, Counselor Bedwell,
Yes.
Counselor Caceres,
Aye.
Counselor Seha,
Yes.
Counselor Purdy,
Yes.
Counselor Sini,
Yes.
Mayor Clevenger.
Aye.
That's a unanimous vote. Unanimous vote. Motion passes. Sorry, I'm getting tired.
All right.
Well, thank you for all
Do we
your
need to take
assistance.
another break? Can you get some coffee, Colleen?
Yeah, I'm good.
All right. We can keep on trucking then.
Yeah.
So no old business, new business. We have resolution number 1120. Resolution extending the City of Aumsville's workers' compensation coverage to volunteers of the City of Aumsville policy year 2020 to 2021.
Did we do number? Did we do? I'm missing something. The budget appropriation 1020. Have we done that one yet?
Yes, we did that one before we did this one.
Okay.
Did do that one yet?
Did I? Well, I
That
did.
was another unanimous one.
Oh, gotcha. Okay, I see what I did. It's my fault. I had them out of order. We're good. 1120.
This is a typical housekeeping motion. I hate to call anything housekeeping, but we have to approve this motion or this resolution each year just to cover volunteers that with workman's comp coverage. So,
Does anybody have any questions on it? I mean, we did the same thing last year. Do we have a motion?
I move to approve resolution 1120 extending the city of Aumsville's worker compensation coverage to volunteers of the city of Aumsville for policy year 2020 to 2021.
Second.
Vote by roll call.
Okay, Counselor Bedwell,
Yes.
Counselor Casares,
Aye.
Counselor Seha,
Yes.
Counselor Purdy,
Yes.
Counselor Sini,
Aye.
Mayor Clevenger.
Aye.
That's a unanimous vote. The motion passes.
So resolution number 1220, resolution authorizing 2019-2020 budget appropriation transfers in the water and sewer funds. I mean, we all have this on there, but it was a very minimal amount, if I'm not mistaken. It's like $500, something like that.
yeah, it's not a lot, Mayor, but just as we get to the end of the year, we like to true up those funds, and there's just a small administrative transfer. I think in one fund it was $207 and
205 and 571.
yeah, 205 and 571. Yep.
Anybody have any questions about this one? Do we have a motion?
I move to approve resolution number 1220, a resolution authorizing the 2019-2020 budgetary appropriation transfers in the water and sewer funds as presented.
I
I'll second that motion. Oh, someone else can second
Okay. I think Gus beat you.
it. Okay.
I'll let you guys fight over it.
We'll get buzzers from now on. You could just
Okay.
There we go.
buzz in.
It's all right. I win because I let him.
There you go.
All right, so vote by roll call.
Counselor Bedwell,
Yes.
Counselor Casares,
Aye.
Counselor Seha,
Yes.
Counselor Purdy,
Yes.
Counselor Sini,
Aye.
Mayor Clevenger.
Aye.
That is a unanimous vote. The motion passes.
All right, item C, you have the resignation of Counselor Case. And I know, like Ron and I talked about this a little bit. I guess there's some leeway in how we move forward with appointing someone, or I guess we have the option to not appoint someone. Is that what you were saying, Ron?
Well, yeah, I mean, I just wanted to make sure council understood what all their options were. First of all, a council position, a council position doesn't actually become vacant until the city council either accepts a resignation or they designate it vacant for a number of reasons that can occur. Council can designate the position vacant. And then council has a lot of latitude as far as filling the position. And I was just because I've seen this occur before many times, there's a lot of pitfalls with filling a position. If we went through the normal process, we would probably be appointing somebody the first meeting in August. That's a very short window before the election, and council can take a couple of approaches. One is they can appoint somebody that does not plan to run in the election, so it does not appear that they are favoring a candidate. They can appoint somebody that plans to run in the election because they want somebody that maybe is dedicated and they want to make sure that they have a real interest in serving the community, or simply leave it vacant for a few months, a pretty short window, and wait for the results of the election to occur, and then just appoint that person for the last meeting of the year, or wait until the first of the year. Those are three options. I just wanted to make sure you all knew what your options were. I mean, you could appoint somebody today once you declare the position vacant, but the council's had a tradition of advertising in the next newsletter, giving 2 or 3 weeks for folks to put in applications, a couple of weeks to review the applications, and then put that on the next council agenda. You could change that up however you like. I just wanted to let you know that there's not a state requirement for you to fill the position this close to the election. You're not in jeopardy of a quorum, and it's really up to you what drives you to fill the position, whether you want somebody that is dedicated to running or somebody that's dedicated to not running, if you do decide to fill the position. But there is cause and effect for all those things, and I just wanted to make sure you knew that as you discuss what to do with this position.
And I'll be honest, I couldn't possibly care less if they want to run or not. I'm more concerned about, their feelings towards the community and supporting what is, the desire for greater communication with the community that we've had. Whether they run or not is a personal decision on their own end, as far as I'm concerned.
I do have a question. So I would say about 80, I don't know, I'm guessing. It's a guess. I feel the majority of the time we do agree on a lot of things. I think we as a council, even with Jim, when we disagree, we're very split. It's either one way or another. Our votes are very close, like 3-4, 4-3. So if we choose not to appoint someone right now, what happens when we vote on an issue and it's tied?
Depending on how the vote is framed, usually what happens is it fails for lack of majority vote, which is not necessarily always a bad thing if you've got a fourth member that's constantly moving at one side or the other. Often, I'm not saying that you shouldn't or should. I'm just saying that's what occurs, and oftentimes that might cause a little bit more conversation on resolution or a path forward, knowing that you're in that particular dilemma.
I would also ask with that though, so if we're not filling the position, there's still technically 7 council positions, so our quorum is still 4.
Is that right?
Correct.
For a vote, yeah.
Yeah, so just throwing this out there, but again, I mean, I think everybody knows, my full-time employment is as a defense contractor, and sometimes that takes me out of the United States. I don't know when the next time I'm going back to Africa is. I do know that the Department of State has given the okay for us to go back, and it is the host nations that are saying no. But if I were to go back, that now puts us down at 5 people. There's a greater jeopardy of us not having a quorum on issues where we may need a quorum. So I would caution against us not appointing someone.
No, I'm not advocating that way. I just wanted, before we make a decision, I just want to be informed, like I've had these conversations with you, what happens, I like to plan A, B, and C, I want to be prepared. What are the consequences if we don't appoint somebody? What are the consequences if our votes are tied? And like you said, if we don't appoint somebody and you're out of country, what's going to happen? Those are all the things that I want to discuss before we move forward. I just want to have a clear picture of what we're looking at.
Well, and I think I just wanted to give you your options. I think the first discussion really is just, does everybody want to fill the position between now and election? I think that's just the first question to ask and maybe gauge where people are.
Honestly, my opinion, given the short time span that we're working with, I know it may be quicker than we've done it in the past, but I would like to see us try and get someone appointed in July.
I was just about to suggest that.
Given the situation and how this all played out, I think that there's a lot of people that kind of expected this and were aware of the situation. So getting the word out and having people apply may not be as difficult as it has been in the past when there's been a vacancy.
So actually, I think the July 27th meeting could work. That's late enough in July.
I was going to ask that question.
Yeah.
If that last meeting
Even
in
if that's the
July.
only agenda item at that meeting,
Yeah, it falls pretty late in July, so I think that would give us time to get the newsletter out, and we'll put out some applications on our website, and we'll do a couple things up on Facebook. Yeah, I mean, it's up to you guys. Obviously, I don't want to rush the process, but I think that could work.
I think given the time frame and given the fact that this seat is one that will be up for election in November, having a bit of an expedited timeline is not necessarily a bad thing. Like I said, as far as someone, whether they intend to run or not, I mean, we all know how this goes. Someone may get appointed and after their first meeting say, I don't want to run.
Yeah.
Or
So-
they could jump into it and say, hey, I really like this. I enjoy being able to put in my 2 cents and be a part of shaping our community. And that may be what makes them decide they want to run. So whether they come into the thing wanting to run or not, I really could care less.
And really, that's a personal choice between, the council can appoint somebody for any reason they want. You don't have to, under our rules, you don't have to appoint somebody because you think they're the most qualified, or you can appoint them just because you think they're a good person, or you think they're a good fit for the team, or you just like them personally. There really are no outlines for each individual's council member's rationale or reason. So yeah, it can be whatever you like. You can appoint them based on a relationship or their application. It's really up to you guys. There's no boundaries.
I think I would like to see us make that appointment on the July 27th meeting if possible. I think we should probably set a deadline, maybe the meeting prior, as far as applications. And I think we should all go into it knowing that it is perfectly acceptable if we want to, call that person and ask them some questions and, figure out where they stand on issues that are important to us or issues that we feel are important to the community. And then we can all go into that July 27th meeting, having a good idea of who the potential applicants are and have our deliberations then.
I'm
Is
okay
anybody
with that.
opposed to that?
I would like to see what's been done before where they apply and they come and talk to us and like an interview type thing.
Yeah, and I would think that if we are going to set the deadline to the previous meeting, maybe we have them come in at the previous meeting and we do the appointment the next one. That gives us some time so that if other questions pop up, we can get the applicant's call to say, hey, I thought about this. What are your thoughts? And then we can all come in and have our deliberations on the 27th. Would that be acceptable?
I think so.
Yeah, typically what we do, council, is we ask interested parties to come to the meeting. It's usually the one that they're appointed at, and we just tell them to be prepared to tell us a little bit about themselves. That's what I've seen done in the past. I don't know if I want to do it. Well, obviously it's not my choice, but I would probably recommend against like a formal interview process.
Yeah.
But certainly asking them questions and getting to know the candidate a little bit more at a public meeting's appropriate. If you wanted to do more of like an interview style panel, then maybe that's something that you volunteer a smaller group for, and you do that separate. It doesn't make good theater usually.
But I think that
That's
then
not
we
the
run
type.
into quorum issues, and are we going to set up another Zoom meeting, or are we all trying to get in the same room but be 6 feet away? I think doing any kind of formalized interview process is going to be more of a hassle than it's really worth.
That wasn't what I was proposing. It was just a get acquainted meeting that we had before.
Okay, so did you want to do that on the 13th or the 27th?
I would like to see us open up the application process, close it on the 13th, and have those individuals present on the 13th for us to talk to them. And then we will make the appointment on the 27th. That gives the council a little bit more time so that if any other questions pop up, we have the ability to talk to them one-on-one.
So I have a thought here. I have no problem with the timeline, with exception of one thing. Looking at doing a social media blast and then also putting it in the newsletter. I think if we close it on 13th, to expect the council to do a speed read of applications and to do a thought pattern in one night and then do an interview at the same time, or not an interview, but a meeting, just sounds like a lot to process for such an important position. So I would almost recommend that we close it by the 13th and that we actually have the conversations with folks on the 27th. And then we can decide on the 27th versus having the conversations with folks on the 13th, the same day we close it. I would like to have a little bit of time in between the day we close it and get applications and the day we actually sit down with folks at a meeting. My other thought too is the closer we get to the 27th, my hope is the more likely we'll be doing less of this and more of in person. So that's the other thought is I'm for pushing it to the 27th to be able to have that more in person kind of conversation, if possible. We don't know. So that's my 2 cents on that.
So,
Colleen, did you have something?
I do. I don't know if it would be too soon, but if we could set the deadline for the day before we send out packets, then I could actually put those applications in the packets and you would have them before, the typical 5 days before the meeting.
Yeah.
So that's that's another option.
Yeah, there's no way we can do that for the first meeting in July. Okay. I would say close it on the 13th, and then you're going to send out packets the next week. But I don't see any reason why we can't get these to council outside of the packet. I mean, we could send it to them electronically.
Yeah, it just they wouldn't have any time to read them before the meeting.
If we close it on the 13th, I mean, I don't think it would be too much work to just blast them out to everybody as they come in, honestly. And then that gives us time between the 13th and 27th to formulate questions. If we want to call people and talk to them, that's appropriate. And then on the 27th, we can go ahead and have either our face-to-face or our Zoom conversation with them and make the appointment on the 27th.
That's what I was saying. Yeah, close it on the 13th. Send the packets. The council will have the week of the 14th through the 17th, and you'll have the week of the 20th through the 24th with the material. And then your official packet will get sent out on the 23rd for the 27th. So if we get it out to you, let's say we get everything to you on the 14th, that's going to give you more than 10 days. Does that sound reasonable?
Does anybody have any issues with that course of action? I think that sounds great to me.
That sounds good to me.
Agree.
All right, so what you really need to do then, now that you've indicated to me the process, it doesn't take a motion, but what does take a motion is accepting the resignation of Counselor Jim Case and officially declaring that position vacant.
I'll make a motion to accept the resignation of Counselor Jim Case and declaring his position, or that position, vacant.
We have a second? Vote by roll call.
Okay, Counselor Bedwell,
Yes.
Counselor Caceres,
Aye.
Counselor Seha,
Yes.
Counselor Purdy,
Yes.
Counselor Sini,
Aye.
Mayor Clevenger.
Aye.
That's a unanimous vote. The motion passes.
All right. So, Ron, your report. Please tell me it's a quick one.
I was like, we're not done yet?
No.
I apologize, Council, for this agenda. I knew that this was going to be a pretty thick, pretty heavy workload for us.
I should have asked him to read that one ordinance out loud.
I know where you live, Angie.
As we move through the updates in our ordinances, we're going to start to see pretty heavy agendas, although I think the development ordinance is one of the most complex ordinances that we have to just go through and wade through all the material. But anyway, I'll try to make it as brief as possible. If you have questions, make sure that ask those to me. I just want to let you know that we're still doing tweaks and modifications to the website. So even though it's up, as we're running across things or people are commenting on pieces that they're using, we're updating those and doing a pretty good job at it, I think. We're starting to get a system down, but I feel like that website is well worth the investment and the tool that we expected it to be. So COVID-19 update, I actually gave you a little bit of this update on the budget, so I'll skip some of that. Currently, we have 12 active cases in the Aumsville zip code. That's doubled in the past 3 weeks, and if you're watching the numbers, the state has posted some pretty high numbers recently. It seems like Marion County numbers seem to be stabilizing or hovering about what they were. You know, it's 11 to 18 cases a day typically. Some days we'll have a little better showing, some days a little worse. That's still significant, and there's obviously concerns about that spiking. We haven't installed the glass partition in City Hall yet. We're still waiting to hear to get the contractor out. He had to order all of that material and everything was back ordered. Once we get that installed, I think we'd feel pretty comfortable opening City Hall. Staff is there staffing City Hall. We're answering the phones. We're dealing with people on a regular basis. We're going out to meet people on site. We're doing all the things that we typically do. What we're not doing is just having people come in the lobby. I'll kind of judge that based on, you know, if the cases drop dramatically statewide, I might open without the little glass partition, but I think it's supposed to be done. I think their contract requires that it's done by the end of next week. Is that right, Steve? Does that sound right? Yeah. Okay. So hopefully they don't run into any backlogs. Right now, our total cost to the city is somewhere around $30,000. That's an estimate. I'm not tracking it in a detailed spreadsheet, but over a number of funds, it's about $30,000. We think we can recover or recoup most of that money, either through grants or through some of the programs that the state's working on right now. If not, our plan is to have council after July 1st do basically an action through the little council reserve fund that you have to cover those costs. So that's our plan, and we can talk more about that in depth if you'd like. The question now is a number of cities are discussing moving away from their no disconnection policies. That's a discussion of topic right now, and continuing or reinstating late fees. We haven't done that, but I thought this would be a good opportunity to talk to you guys and find out if you had a preference on that. I will tell you that we really don't have a significant number of people that are in a negative standing with the city. Most of the folks that we've had that were affected and communicated to us that they were affected by COVID were taken care of through one of our charitable funding sources. There's a number of outlets that we have available to us to help folks with those. So outside of collecting the late fees, there really hasn't been an impact, except for we do have a couple of people that just think because we made that statement, they don't have to pay their water bill, and we're communicating to them that that's not the case. The other thing is we do apply the late fee and the disconnection fee if the homeowner hasn't contacted us. So if they've just not contacted us, not made an attempt to pay their bill or do an extension or a payment plan, we are charging them we are assessing the late fees. We're just not disconnecting anybody. So the next disconnection would be, the late fees would be applied the 15th of July if we decided to go ahead and move back into a normal policy. But I'm not stuck on any particular month. It could be the 15th. It could be the August billing. It's really up to you guys. It just does have an impact on the overall utility budget, and at some point that's going to work its way into a rate adjustment at some point in the future. So I'm just not sure how far you guys want to go with that.
I think, given the numbers that we saw the past 3 days or so, with quite a few spikes in diagnoses, which some people want to attribute that to the protests, some people don't. But I think it would be prudent for us to maybe push it a little further out just to adjust for that. I would like to see us reinstitute those two things separately. So maybe, in August we say, okay, we're going to start doing late fees again, and then by October we say we're going to start doing disconnections again.
Okay, so anybody else have, because we're doing late fees now if they don't contact us.
But if they don't, I'm saying whether they contact us or not, August late fees come back as per usual.
Okay.
October disconnections come back as per usual, unless there's some major change.
Unless there's a major change. Yeah, that would give us, it would give us something to plan for, and we could also put something out in the, utility bills.
I would like to just be maybe a little bit more generous, just because unfortunately I get to see a little bit of the underbelly way more than the standard folks and whatnot. So I almost think going with Mayor Clevenger's plan, but looking at it more of the late fees in an October timeframe and the disconnect fees to turn it. Because I truly don't think we're in a place where we're going to see everything that's going on. I think we're going to see another situation, and we just, the drug session and everything and unemployment numbers. I just think the more generous we can be and the more flexible we can be with folks, the better it's going to be long term. So that's just my thought. I love Mayor Clevenger's idea. I just think we should push it a little bit further more to be a little more generous to the community.
Yeah. My only concern is, what if we do run into another rate increase? The water sewer bill is a hot enough topic as it is. If we end up having a double rate increases, that might, go over the church.
And remember, we have an automatic increase that goes in effect in July, lines up with the fiscal budget. The only concern I have here's the concern I have. The concern I have is our community hasn't been widespreadly affected with unemployment and or COVID infections. And we have a mechanism to take care of those folks that have been either unemployed or infected, or have somebody in their household that's affected. And we are taking care of the folks that contact us and ask us for that help. The problem with it is there's a fairly good size group of folks that are just not paying because they don't think they have to. And my concern with that, and it's not that they're unemployed or that, you know, they're impacted necessarily by the COVID. It's just because we put this policy in place. And the problem with it is, or the concern that I have is at some point we're going to get to a disconnection point, and they're going to have a bill that is going to be difficult for anybody to pay in one bill because they've literally done, you know, not much to it. And if they just ignore us and they have this accumulated bill and these accumulated fees, and we get into September, October, you know, they may have a $1,500 bill. And then it's going to be difficult for us to help people in those situations because they haven't really done anything. That's my only concern about letting the whole disconnection thing go too long. If they're infected or family members infected or they've lost their job, we've got resources we're sending those people to.
Remind me, Ron, what's our late fee right now? Like $3?
The late fee's $3, and then if the homeowner contacts us, we waive that. Yeah. And then we have them do what's called a promise to pay. It's an extension notice that just gives specific dates, and they can break the payment up into smaller amounts, or they can pay by a certain date. Yeah. And then I think that there's a daily interest rate that's charged on whatever balance is owing. And then the disconnection fee.
The disconnect fee till, you know, December timeframe, or push disconnections to December timeframe. I think with as low as the late fee is, implementing that sooner rather than later may give people a little impetus to like, hey, it's time to start paying again. And then, you know, we can deal with disconnections on a case-by-case basis if needed between now and, you know, October, November, December, whenever we want to set that. But I think that the reinstitution of late fees may be enough to get some people who just aren't paying to realize, like, okay, it's time to start paying again.
I'm more concerned with the disconnections than I am the late fees. Yeah, honestly, I think not having a mechanism that puts the responsibility in the homeowner's pocket to pay it could create a problem, and I'd be deeply concerned about waiting till December. And I'm not saying that we're going to shut anybody off that's in need. We have, like I say, we do have resources, but we have to make them responsible to go and connect with those resources and get that bill paid. To try to put that responsibility in our court is going to be really difficult.
Steve, you know you can't bring snacks to class unless you bring enough for everybody.
So I have a question, Ron. Like, we have worked with businesses and like where we've made contracts with individual people, you know, you have to do this, you have until this date to get this done, or you'll be charged the back fees. Like that. Is that something that we can look at? Like let's take, for example, let's say I'm one of those people. I haven't been in contact with you. I'm not paying my water bill. I'm like, screw the city. It's COVID. I'm going to take advantage of everything. Right?
Yeah.
Or I'm just not going to pay my water bill. So, and obviously the city is reaching out. Hey, you haven't been in contact with us. But like, I see where Derek's coming from, and I see where like you're coming from a city standpoint. You know, like, I'm not going to ask you the number of individual households that aren't paying. Like, I'm not really like, I'm sure you can send that to us, but, and I get the worry about having this, you know, $1,000 bill.
Yeah, it's a really small number, council member.
So
of people that aren't paying.
So what I'm suggesting is, let's start reinstating in October, the late fees, or they have until October to make contact with you and start making payments on this ginormous bill that they're getting. And if they don't, they're going to be like responsible for all the late fees back to date from when we implemented this new policy. Like,
yeah, I just get really concerned. I think if we were to do that, we would be setting ourselves up for just a host of liens and things of that nature on people. Right now we have a process that they can go 2 months without paying. So if their bill comes due and we're going to disconnect, let's say it's the 23rd, as long as they come in before that date, they fill out a simple form, and it's a simple form, and they put the date in there that they can pay.
Yeah.
And that's an extension, and we accept that. And they can literally be into the city for 2 months worth of bills by just doing that action. Now, if it's a base bill, it's not too bad. You're talking about a couple $100, but oftentimes it's people that will use a little bit more water, and that bill will creep up quite a little bit. So I get concerned about us saying, hey, we're not going to do anything until December. What my preference is really just take this by month basis. If you don't want to pick a date like August, my preference would be that we say, okay, we're going to continue our current policy through July, and then reevaluate it in July. But just remember, the longer we waive these out, the disconnection policy out there, we're setting more and more households up for failure, not because of a COVID issue, but because we created an atmosphere where they weren't required to pay on a regular basis.
What if we went with, August and October, like I had previously mentioned, and then we put something on the bills and in the newsletter about, if you do have a legitimate financial hardship, you have until October to come into the city and set up a payment plan. If you don't, then we're hitting you with the whole thing. Sorry. But if you come in, if you do your own due diligence, if you're playing by adult rules and you come in and talk to the city, we'll still work with you.
I think council forgets sometimes that we actually have a lot of power, more than is probably good, obviously, in some respects. But we have a lot of power over and discretion over bills, on a case-by-case basis. And I'm not advocating that we exercise that power, but I'm just reminding the council of that, so we can know that, if, excuse my language, but if things get really crappy, if we have another round of COVID and we slide economically, we'll have some tools in our toolbox to be able to address things individually. And I'm not saying I want to, shut the door on anybody and shut anybody down. I think I just want to be prudent with what we're doing, and we're making it uniform in the decisions that we're making. I think doing an August and October sort of, I think model works really, really well. And then for the people that really do need some extra help, there's some resources at the staff level, and if God forbid, even talk to us, if necessary. So, I'm fully comfortable with doing what Mayor proposed and going with something that would be similar to a August, October timeline, and giving people kind of the chance to be able to play catch up and give them some, leeway, as well as work with them and be responsible overall. I think that kind of accomplishes it, doing that.
Hey,
my
Ron,
preference.
is there a chance that
Go ahead.
like numbers on how many households are in this situation? Because you said there's not that many, and I'm just curious if there's the numbers, out of the residents that we have, how many total?
I can find that. I think I have it in an email here. Let me look.
Are we talking like 20 households, 30, 40?
Well, no, I think it may be a little bit more than that. Let me see.
Well, I mean, honestly, the numbers are kind of irrelevant because unless we start diving into people's bank accounts, we don't know if they're not paying because they're a jerk or they're not paying because they have no income. Like we have no way of discerning that.
Well, let me expand on the numbers, because if the numbers are really relatively small, back to what Nico said, as a council, we could really do a targeted outreach through the city if they're really small to say, hey, we've noticed that you've been struggling with paying the bill. Here's some resources to deal with this. At the same time, so we're addressing Ron and staff's concerns, we could move forward with, in general, here's what we're doing. Is we're stopping the late fees on this time and we're stopping the disconnect fees. So we could do both things. I mean, if at the end of the day, we're concerned about making sure that we don't set people up for failure, then we have an opportunity, if the numbers are small enough, to address it that way. I mean, if it's over half of our community, that's a different story. But if it's,
the number I just pulled them up, it's a total of $3,400 that's outstanding from a smaller number of accounts, 900 from March and 2,500 from April.
And how many accounts is that?
I don't have the exact number, so I don't want to give you a number, but I'll get it for you and email it out tomorrow. And again, my concern isn't that, I mean, if you recall, I was the one that proposed this policy. I don't think we have a COVID situation that we're addressing in our utility accounts right now. I think that situation has been resolved through other means. I think the folks that we have that we're dealing with in most of these accounts are related to other things.
We can make a decision today, and if we end up with a COVID issue tomorrow, we can change it. There's nothing that says we can't go back.
I just needed to know the only question I really had for you all tonight is not really that we pick a date in the future, because I think we need to adjust as time goes on. But the question that I had for you tonight is, did you want to implement the latent disconnection fees as of July? It doesn't sound like anybody wants to do that.
Not for July.
Okay, so then really there's really no other question. I'll get more information about the individual accounts, and we'll talk about that at the July 1st or the first council meeting in July, and then we'll look at it for August.
There's also a comment in the chat box too, just in case anybody wants to see that and address that.
Yeah, I saw that. I mean, forgiving the water bills would be nice. At the same time, that's well, at least at this point, $3,400 that's coming from somewhere else. So we need to make every effort possible to make sure that the city gets paid for those bills, and on a case-by-case basis. If there's someone that legitimately had no income, we do have a number of charitable groups within the community that try and help. But I think having a blanket policy, if we're just going to forgive these, would be financially irresponsible, even though it is a small amount of money, because that is money that has to come from somewhere else.
Well, and remember, these $3,400 are not COVID related.
Mm-hmm.
If they were COVID related, we would have gotten them paid through other means.
I think forgoing the disconnection fee and the late fee for July, I think that's fine. July 13th meeting, have at least the number of accounts, and then we can look at that and decide, hey, are we going to implement something in August? Are we going to implement something in September? And that also gives us time to look at what has been happening socially recently with the protests and see, is there going to be a spike? We've seen a small spike, but is there going to be a spike that affects our community? Is there going to be a much larger spike? And we can address it at that time. I think right now making a concrete decision may be a little bit little bit premature.
Okay.
And I think this is a good opportunity to, like, Ron, I think the city has been doing a great job of communicating, and I just want to thank all the staff for that. Our communication through social media and emails and reaching the community has gone up so much. And I think that this is one of those things that we can start communicating with the rest of the town, saying, hey, you know what? Yeah, this situation is still going on, but it's going to come to an end, and we need you to come in, and we want to work with you to get this bill paid, so you don't end up with a $1,500 bill that you can't pay the end of the end of the year.
Yeah, and most people are really good. Actually, I'm really shocked at we had very few people call and ask for assistance. Most people were, calling for extensions, which they typically would. But most of the community fared out pretty well.
I've helped plenty of our people with their bills, but $1,500, sorry.
All right. So we'll put that off until the next meeting. As of now, we're going to stay status quo. The governor came out with a change today to phase 2. And I don't know, I've sent a number of emails out regarding this, but they were not allowing playground equipment to open up in phase 2. They were keeping that close to phase 3. I didn't really understand that personally. I mean, listen, I'm afraid for everybody in this time with elevated risk. But we have people, ignoring the closed signs and tearing down the tape at the playground equipment as it is, and going out there, and we'll tell them that, hey, per the governor's order, that equipment's closed, but that's as far as we go with it. And so I just felt like it was really difficult to relay the messages that are in the governor's communications about what is actually open and what is actually closed, because it's just a little vague. A lot of the information is a little vague. Outdoor recreation opened in phase 1, but you couldn't do Little League or softball, or I consider that outdoor recreation. I don't know. So it just wasn't detailed enough. And but she did make that change for phase 2, and so we're following that now. Marion County, I think they were going to apply for phase 2 this week. So we'll see if they get phase 2. I know when we spoke last week, the only difficulty that they were meeting, I think, was some of the contact tracing requirements. They were falling a little bit behind on, but otherwise, I think they were meeting.
The cases over the past 3 days. I mean, there was 93 on Friday, 96 on Saturday, and 146. And Marion County was the third highest producer of those numbers. I think that's going to put a kink in us moving to phase 2.
I really don't feel that should be held against us, but.
Well, I mean, yeah.
I don't think the actions of 2,000 people should be held against the whole county.
Well,
I don't think the spikes that we're
gathering in large groups, Angie.
I'm not sure
I know.
I'm not sure that the spikes that we're seeing right now are related in any way to any protest groups. I don't think we've seen that impact yet. So if you micro-analyze a lot of that information from Marion County or even around the state, I think out of those 2 high days that they posted, Mayor, the 146 and the 114 or whatever it was today, I think 120 of those came from a food processing.
Well, and the testing is increased too, so if they can tie it to the testing, it may not count against us. I'm just, I guess, kind of playing devil's advocate here, that with that 3-day number spike and whatever comes out for today, that push us back an extra week or so on going to phase 2, assuming that this, small spike doesn't continue.
It very well could. So we're going to keep proceeding cautiously. My recommendation is that we do at least the second meeting via Zoom. We do have the capability of social distancing up to a certain number of people at the community center. What we don't really have, what we haven't really figured out is, could we do like some people Zoom and some people at the community center? I think it would have to be all of us at the community center. But there is room to social distance if we limit occupancy or participation from the community. But even tonight, I think we had 11 or 12 attendees, and we could easily accommodate 11 or 12 or 15 attendees or 20 attendees and maintain that distance. I would, like you, Mayor, I'd like to see what the numbers continue to do for another week or two. So my recommendation is we do the next meeting via Zoom.
I mean, I would say that we continue planning on doing them via Zoom until we have a plan. I mean, honestly, the Zoom meetings, we're getting more participation than when we do them in person, and we have video. So I've got no qualms with continuing with the Zoom meetings until we know that we're good to go ahead and have in-person meetings.
Yeah, and we'll have video with our in-person meetings. I think just let's see what these numbers do, and then we can make a decision. But I think we could accommodate an in-house meeting. Staff would wear masks. We'd offer masks to the community members. It would be, up to you guys. I think if you wanted to wear a mask, and we could separate the dais, we can move them apart. So
we put Derek in a wheel style vehicle.
Pardon me?
I think we put Derek in a Pope-mobile style vehicle, perhaps.
I mean, I was thinking more just like a bubble, but whatever works.
Ron, I'll just say I really do like this meeting format, and I like the fact that we can do it live the way we're doing it, to where people can participate from the comfort of their home. So, I mean, this is something way back originally I was hoping to see us do when we started doing videoing and some of the other stuff. So I'm actually happy that we had this COVID-19 situation that pushed us to this level to kind of prove that we could do something like this. And I'm hoping that going forward, that somehow, whether we're in person or not, that we incorporate this to where people can feed in live from the comfort of their home or from a work environment or from whatever to be able to participate. So
just to address the comment from Scott that popped up real quick, the intention is to continue videotaping the meetings as far as doing live meetings from the community center. I think we're slightly limited on technology right now, unless we just had like one giant camera that was putting everyone in one Zoom panel. But I think and we've talked about this in council meeting, probably the 10-year plan is to be streaming meetings. The immediate fix is let's get video going and work on it from there.
Yeah, we're definitely working in that direction. Community events, the summer children's program, we're all set to begin on the 19th. We are limiting the number of participants per age group. I think I've already reported that to you. We've got them set up with a digital gun thermometer, masks. They're going to register people in advance, and people will have to sign in and sign out, and that's how we're doing that. So hopefully that works out okay this year. It's going to look a little different. Saturday market, we will have our first Saturday market on June 13th. We did move over to Mill Creek Park only for the purpose of having a little bit more space so we can make sure that we kept people scattered a little bit. We will have portable hand washing stations there. I think we're going to have a hand sanitizer station set up as well. But we'll continue in that path. And then for those of you that haven't got down to that end of the woods, we did complete the Michael Way project this week, and I got down and inspected that. It looks really good. A huge difference from what it was to what it is now. And I actually was pretty impressed because the asphalt lift that they put down, if you look at the pictures, is I thought we were only going to get about 1.25 inch lift, but it looks like we've probably got a 3-inch lift. 3-inch, yep, 3-inch. That's what it looked like from the pictures. And then there's fabric down, so that road is going to last quite a little while. There also was a couple of ADA access upgrades on the corner of 4th and Michael Way. So hopefully that will take care of that pesky problem that's been around for a while. One of the things that we will see, because I don't think I'll be able to get the project, I'll be able to probably get it paid for to the contractor and get the money sent out before the end of the fiscal closeout. I just don't think I'll be able to get additional money back from ODOT. So what we'll probably see there is in that transportation fund, we'll see a little lower beginning fund balance than what we budgeted, which is perfectly fine. And then we'll get a little additional revenue after the fiscal budget year. So well, I think I touched on all the things, unless council has questions for me. The police report is in your packet, and the public works report is in your packet. I don't think there were any major announcements or things that were going on in those, just kind of our ins and outs, right, folks?
Steve, are you awake? I'm waiting for like the grandpa thing in the chair. Like, no, I'm listening. I'm listening.
How's public works going, Steve?
We're just trying to keep our equipment running and getting the grass cut and keeping up with that. We've done a lot of repairs on stuff that we hadn't let go in the past. So
excellent.
It's been a good deal.
Chief, you got anything you want to add for the report?
Just working on that streaming for a council meeting. That's going to be my next project challenge. So we did order some cables and see how that's going to go. TV is going to go up, 86-inch TV in the community center.
Wow.
We're putting that behind the council dais so that we can put up presentations and people can see it.
Go to state surplus to get a jumbo one.
So Ron, you said that we're moving to Mill Creek for the Saturday market.
Yeah.
Have we had, like, I was kind of worried we weren't going to get a lot of vendors because of the code. Like, are we getting vendors in? Like,
we have 18 signed up.
Yay!
Yeah, so probably depending upon the weather, we'll get anywhere from 12 to 15 more than likely. I usually lose a few.
I would like to see us continue what we did last year with having, myself or the chief or a councilman having some people out there. I know that sometimes we just sat there and did nothing with our day, but I think it was good to have people available. So I mean, however we want to make that happen, I would like to see that continue.
You want to do that for Saturday, Derek?
Is that this coming Saturday?
Yeah, this is. Well, I'm gonna be there. So if somebody else, well, I'm gonna be there with my daughter for her personal stuff. But
the 13th is the first one.
Yes.
Yes, this weekend.
Yeah, I can do it.
Okay. I'll put the tent up.
You should start a sign up.
Actually, my plan was to put the extra tent that we have over the hand washing station. So if it's raining, people have a way to have someplace to go, but that would be a good, if we could combine that.
I've got another 10 by 10 we can use.
Oh, perfect. Okay.
I got one more with the PD too, Pauline.
Okay, good. We got plenty then.
Chief, did you have anything that you wanted to report since you're here?
No, I mean, it was just going on with business as usual. We did was able to secure 1,000 face masks for when we do open back up, that if people come in and don't have something, we can get them passed out. They're the KN95, so they're not a medical grade, but they will work for a face covering.
Yeah, so that was through surplus when they found out that those wouldn't qualify for the medical grade. All of a sudden they offered them up, and we'll use them for folks that come in for courts or at the counter, that if they come in and they're coughing or anything, or they need a mask, we'll get that to them. Good. Anything else, Chief?
We're still holding our, not running our municipal court yet. Our judge does not want to start up the municipal court probably until next month. We're doing, hearings by phone right now. We're trying to handle them, by calling in, and then we'll start municipal court back up.
Cool.
Excellent.
Anything else in your report, Ron?
No, just that we've been doing a lot of work on the code revisions with the planner and the city attorney, and that's been a pretty extensive project. So most of the development ordinance was a little bit of a rush because you just never know when the next development's going to come in that you're trying to deal with. And then we did have a lot of sheds and garages that we didn't really want to put them through the process of a planning commission meeting if we didn't have to. So we're really trying to push the envelope on that a bit. The other code updates, we need to get them updated, but there's less of an urgency. So once those start coming to council in their format, feel free to slice and dice them how you want. I mean, we're not significantly changing any of those ordinances. We're just clarifying what's currently there. So, but if you feel like something's not clear, we can certainly take a look and hold those things over as long as we need to. Otherwise, operations are doing pretty well. Businesses are open again. A few businesses shut down. A lot of them didn't. We do have quite a little bit of development activity in town, and there's a number of pretty significant projects that are kind of in the wings right now from the commercial side.
Good. Well, all righty then. Counselors have anything to report?
Can let you know I was appointed to the steering committee for the MWAC meetings for transportation. And Michael Way residents said to say thank you for their road.
Anybody else? The only thing I've got, two things I kind of mentioned earlier. One, Oregon Mayors Association asked me to sign on to a letter of multiple mayors basically requesting from the governor that cities be able to, appropriate COVID funding stuff more directly. I said, yeah, go ahead and throw my name on there. Don't know if it'll go anywhere. Don't anticipate it going anywhere, but I did go ahead and sign on to that. As I stated in other meetings too, I plan to keep everybody updated on my work situation as far as when I'm going back over to Africa. And as I said earlier, U.S. Department of State has said, yes, you guys can go back. The host nations are currently saying no. Africa, kind of due to their socioeconomic status, they don't get as much travel. So COVID actually took a lot longer to hit Africa than it did with the United States and Europe and more developed areas. So they're kind of still in the throes of COVID. As it sits right now, I'm not anticipating going anywhere for the entirety of the summer, but I have been informed, hey, I could wake up tomorrow and have an itinerary and have to leave the next day. So I will make sure to keep everyone informed. Other than one of the countries that I may need to go to, I should have fairly reliable internet access. Most of the places I'm going to go to. So, if we're doing Zoom meetings, that's great. I can call into those, no problem. See, no executive session. So if we've got nothing else, we can go ahead. And, what's up, Angie? Go for it.
I just want to let you guys know that I have officially returned back. It's been a couple years, so officially returned back to work full time. I do work swing shift. Right now, I've made arrangements. I'm good for the next 3 or 4 months to attend meetings, but it's like we're working things out at work. But yeah, so I'm back to work full time, and hopefully I can still work things out and with the meetings and everything. So just to let you guys know.
Cool. Thank you. Anybody else? All right, we will go ahead and adjourn the meeting at 10:34.